Good morning, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Unacademy. This is Success Sampath interacting with you. You know very well about Unacademy. This is India's largest and the best online education platform. One second. Yes, you got it. Yes. What are all the benefits you're likely to get once you enroll yourself in Unacademy? Ladies and gentlemen, if that's going to be your question, yes, of course, you got live classes like this. You can chat with your educator. You can engage yourself in all-round productive discussion, and you can also ask all your genuine doubts and participate in the answer polls. All those things you can do when the session's going on. You might be well aware. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got structured courses here which is completely based on UPSC Civil Service examination pattern and syllabus as well. So that we ensure you never get deviated from the expected framework, you stay on track. Yes, and we got a mechanism, ladies and gentlemen, to evaluate your preparation in terms of various level. Why? You might be well aware it's not knowing the stuff, knowing to deliver the stuff. Because delivery matters. For that, we have got a mechanism, as I told you, right, to evaluate your preparation in terms of various levels by conducting regular mock tests and quiz programs. You get a detailed analysis based on your performance. You come to know where you are strong, where you are weak. Not only that, ladies and gentlemen, once you enroll yourself in Unacademy, you got unlimited access. Whatever may be your electronic device, whether it is a mobile phone, laptop, desktop, irrespective of your electronic device, ladies and gentlemen, you can learn from anywhere, anytime. What you have to do, please download Unacademy learning app immediately. And before going there, ladies and gentlemen, it's not only me, we more than 100 plus top educators of India with subject matter expertise, 20 to 25 years of the field experience, ladies and gentlemen, waiting on the part of Unacademy to support you so that you become officer or leader in your own capacity. As I said, what you have to do for that, please download Unacademy learning app immediately, whether it is Android or iOS, ladies and gentlemen. Once you download, you're ready to access all those benefits. Yes. Right. Who is this interacting with you? Of course, you might be well aware. This is Success Sampath from Chennai. Yes, with unique experience of got exposed to the fields of engineering, management, and legal education. Ladies and gentlemen, with 25 years of experience in the field of coaching, especially shaping the careers of civil service aspirants. With my team, I could witness the humble results, of course, 250 plus results. All my kids are working in different parts of India as IAS, IPS, IFS, IRS, you might be well aware. Some of them in abroad as well, part of Union External Affairs Ministry. And this could have prompted you to ask me a question, what's your vision, sir? Yes, to be part of the solution by simplifying the complexity. Fortunately, this particular vision of mine is completely in alignment with Unacademy's vision. We are working together. Together, we are building community. German to begin with, to provide career solution to that Indian youth, later to embrace the global community. As a German, you can also reach me through my Telegram channel, that especially, part of Unacademy, Unacademy_Sampath, and also you can watch a lot of my, that already available videos on the part of Unacademy, especially the YouTube channel. Whether it is, highly scoring, popular, optional subject, sociology, or ethics and integrity, or essay paper, or, the various topics relevant for international relations. Why? Having downloaded the Unacademy learning app, that if you're already subscriber, you can go back and watch a lot of my previous videos, part of the platform itself. The last 5 years, the MCQs, the meant for prelims, cutting across variety of segments of GS, that we have discussed already. Several questions came out of that, and we get fantastic feedback, that we feel encouraged, we feel, that incentivized because of that. And also, what happened, this situation, that encouraged us to discuss, variety of topics, that cutting across, variety of segments cutting across GS meant for mains. Why? Even when it comes to ethics and integrity, right? Several topics what we discussed, came the recent mains also, 2020. So please watch those videos, get benefited, and also, that check with, previous question paper, you will come to know. Ladies and gentlemen, you can also reach me, that Unacademy, the YouTube channel using my ID, say Success Sampath or Sampath Irvengidam, and you reach me through, social network to benefit more. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Unacademy. This is Success Sampath interacting with you. Right. Under UPSC Civil Service Examination, ladies and gentlemen, we've got more than 15,000 courses. Right. So and we strongly recommend that Iconic as well as Plus program. Why Iconic? Because you will be allotted a personal coach, a mentor to understand your nature and to suggest study planner accordingly, and to train you on everyday basis in terms of answer writing exercises. Right. So that's Iconic program, ladies and gentlemen. Though it is virtual learning, it's almost like that you get individual attention. The 24/7, it works that way. And also you've got another program called Plus program, whether it is 6 months program, 12 months program, 24 months program, 36 months program. Ladies and gentlemen, use my referral ID, say Success, to avail maximum 10% discount, because this is Success Sampath interacting with you on the part of Unacademy. Right. And when you use my referral ID, say Success, of course you get around 9,000 rupees difference if you choose Plus program. Probably if you go for, that, of course, that is strongly recommend the Iconic program, you earn almost, around 25,000 rupees. Ladies and gentlemen, make use of the opportunity available and get benefited, and try to, that become topper as well as, that part of steel pillars of, that the nation, officer or leader as soon as possible. Ladies and gentlemen, as early as possible. Variety of teams are the part of Unacademy waiting there to support you. Whether it is 6 months program, 1 year program, 2 years program, whether it is exclusively English medium meant for South Indians or the people throughout India, or exclusive Hindi medium to cater the needs of Hindi belt, and also bilingual medium. Ladies and gentlemen, variety of teams are the part of Unacademy waiting there to support you. Ladies and gentlemen, you can also go for combination of programs. That either choosing GS from Iconic or optional from Plus. You choose in such a way, whether it is 12 months, 24 months, 36 months. Here to use my referral ID, say Success, to avail maximum 10% discount, or you can choose exclusively the Plus program, that meant for both general studies as well as optional subject. Ladies and gentlemen, here you can use my referral ID, say Success. Ladies and gentlemen, technically speaking, you end up paying mere 80 to 100 rupees if you calculate in terms of per day basis. The very money you are spending on everyday basis in terms of your evening snacks, but you ensure your career. Ladies and gentlemen, it is as simple as right. So that, ladies and gentlemen, use my referral ID Success to avail all those benefits. Of course, one particular point we would like to that intimate you, otherwise you would have been well aware that this is ongoing Unacademy Summit 2.0, the very the 2-day summit to transform your the civil service examination preparation. Of course, that it begins today. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, that February 20th and 21st of 2021, that you please register now immediately to get benefited more, so that this is exclusively free summit. Ladies and gentlemen, while enrolling, of course, you can, while registering, you can use my referral ID, say Success, to get benefited more. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, by 10 o'clock, that you're going to see variety of distinguished guests, that they will share their the bureaucratic experience that will be highly motivating. The people cutting across different walks of life, who added value in the very life of that Indian society, are adding value, that are making difference in the lives of so many people. Of course, you can benefit it more. Ladies and gentlemen, register now for this free summit. Of course, it begins today by 10 a.m. Ladies and gentlemen, you can do it. Use my that say referral ID. Use the code Success while registering. Of course, that, ladies and gentlemen, of course, that you will get benefited more, that having attended, you come back and talk to me. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the right time. Let me take you in for the very purpose and direction of today's interaction. This is about regionalism in India. Ism, you're already aware of, that afraid of ism, right? Communalism, casteism, right? This is part of, that social issue, of course, threatening the very national integration fabric of Indian society. Of course, that are questioning the very unity in diversity fabric of our nation. Got the idea? It is that way, that otherwise it is threatening the very internal security of the nation, or affecting the peace of the nation, in turn productivity, because peace is a prerequisite for prosperity. You might be well aware. No peace, no prosperity. No, if there is no economic development, how come you can address, the grievances of the people or eradicate all those, social evils or social issues, either poverty or unemployment, rest of the things I'm talking about. But that, that there should be a peace or balance. Of course, respecting unity in diversity. Of course, the national integration should be preserved, letter and spirit. It's not on paper, letter and spirit. So the variety of issues like, that all those communalism, casteism, it's about, that regionalism in India we are going to discuss today. Why? You might be aware. Because, that the tendency, this is otherwise can be called as, centrifugal tendencies. What do you mean by centrifugal tendencies? That in physics especially, that the very circle, that the force acting towards center, centripetal force. Any object, that rotating, that around a circular path, there will be always the tangential force. There will be always a tendency to go away from the center. The tangential force, otherwise it is called centrifugal force. The tendency to go away from the mainstream, the tendency to go away from the center. To balance this centrifugal tendencies, that so you need, centripetal force. In Tamil, it's called Mayya Vilakku Visai, centrifugal force. In centripetal force, Mayya Nokku Visai. Now, thank God, I studied up to 12th standard Tamil medium. Fortunately, that benefits me more. So, that it's a force acting on, that any object, revolving around, that in the circular path we are talking about. So, any, that the tendency to go away from the center or mainstream is called centrifugal tendencies. You apply the similar science concept in, the governance mechanism. Otherwise, what do you do? That otherwise, let me simply say, the hairpin drive you would have seen that when you go to Ooty or hill station somewhere. So the right side, portion always elevated. Even when there is, that some the bending in the railway track, the right side portion is always elevated. Why? To offset, that to balance this centrifugal force by providing centripetal force, you elevate. So, that in all bending, that the right side portion, that it will be elevated little bit. Be elevated. Understand what I'm talking about? Yes, this way. In all bending. Why? To balance this centrifugal tendencies, you provide centripetal force. Mayya Vilakku Visai balance பண்றதுக்கு Mayya Nokku Visai. Of course, in Tamil. Ladies and gentlemen, of course, here we apply in the governance concept several centrifugal tendencies, the working in India. Otherwise, they are part of, internal security related issue. Whether you call Naxalism, that ideological extremism, whether you call Northeastern insurgency. Got the point now? Whether there are some, several elements, that maybe the linguistic chauvinism in the name of, that the language pride, they want to have, the separate state. Of course, we did in the past officially the State Reorganization Act, that 1956 you call. And that, started because of, Putti Sri Ramalu, the Andhra Kesari, of course, that in indefinite fast, who sacrificed his life because he wanted to have, that a separate, that Andhra state for Telugu speaking people, you might be aware. So, of course, that the linguistic reorganization of, states happened. Maybe that's culmination of the JVP committee also. Jawaharlal Nehru, Vallabhbhai Patel, the Patabi Sitaramaya, JVP committee, then Dhar committee came. Of course, 1956, that State Reorganization Act 1956 based on, the language was taken into account as, criteria for, state formation, you might be aware. But what we are witnessing today, any new states created, it's not based on language. Language is the past. The past, that a new state was carved out of, other states otherwise, that or larger state on the basis of language. Today, language is no more agenda. Development is the agenda. Even the very question came in the previous question also, part of mains. You just go through previous question, you will come to know. So, language is no more agenda for the state creation. Development is the agenda. It's not only India, even in Balochistan, Pakistan, they face same problem. Even the Tibet, Taiwan, of course, in China. Of course, come to India. That very recently the 29th state got created. In India, of course, you call Telangana. Why? The Telangana movement. Because you took away all the resources meant for that particular region, you never paid back. That's a crime. That culminated, after several commissions, of course, the creation of Telangana. Development is the agenda. And also even the very, that the Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh and Uttarakhand you talk about, Smaller the states, better the administration, the development agenda. And not only that, that the Vidarbha, Purvanchal, that Bodoland, several, even, that in Tamil Nadu, Kongu Nadu, why not Vanni Nadu? Of course, the several, maybe in future, Teva Nadu, Devar Mukkulatur Nadu. What is this here? This is completely against international trend, ladies and gentlemen. Why I'm talking, that when at the global level, all nations coming together and forming blocks or union. Of course, recently what happened? The European Union. Of course, that the Maastricht Treaty you are talking about, that culminated in European Union. But there also problem happened, very recently, Brexit. The Britain came out of that. That's a different scenario. And some other nations also likely to follow them. So forget about that. Let's talk in big picture. Ladies and gentlemen, what is the point? So nations coming together and forming blocks and union, of course, European Union, African Union, then why not Asian Union? Then why not Latin American Union? And that is the trend at the global level. Whereas here, that we talk about balkanization of Indian state. Of course, we want to create United States of, India. Of course, that even the southern states already, that in protest mode. The western and southern states, that they are performing well in terms of, various parameters, they are not taken care of. Of course, the fight happens in, either Finance Commission or Niti Ayog Summit, you might be well aware. Even the 15th Finance Commission, that is addressing all those grievances, you might be aware. Where also cry again. You took into account, that you've not taken into account, that 2011 census, you've taken into account world census, where you're not recognizing, that the performance of all those western and southern states who perform well, who work towards development agenda. So there comes ultimately, that it affects inter-state relations. That goes against the spirit of national integration or cooperative federalism or competitive federalism. So language is no more agenda. Development, otherwise, that the very government, when they are not addressing all those, grievances on the part of the people, whether eradicating poverty or generation of employment or developing infrastructure or arresting the widening inequality between rich and poor. Maybe several things, we talk that way, that each and every state has got its own grievances. We are going to discuss in detail. So these are all the things, that's posing challenge towards, the peace, the maintenance of equilibrium as a nation. That challenges the unity in diversity. Maybe the majoritarianism tendency or forced religious conversion or dominant caste, that their foray, they're trying to influence the vote bank politics, the casteism. Of course, you call identity politics. Of course, the government is very keen, they want to deliver developmental politics. But the political parties, that they've got their own affiliation towards the caste. That, of course, as said by M.N. Srinivas, the caste, the 21st century avatar. The people are not casting their votes, they are voting their caste. When that's the scenario, identity politics, in the name of caste, in the name of language, in the name of region, in the name of religion, in the name of race or ethnicity, influencing the voting behavior of the masses. Identity politics we are talking about. The OBC politics, Dalit politics. Ladies and gentlemen, it is that way, that we talk much, of course, the several centrifugal tendencies operating in the nation, the name of Naxalism, of course, Northeastern insurgency. Of course, you talk about, all these, centrifugal tendencies, linguistic chauvinism or separate statehood or interstate disputes or straining of center-state relations. It is that way, ladies and gentlemen, of course, that leads to, of course, why there can't be, United States of South India. Of course, some leaders from South India started speaking this way. Why it can't be, the Dravida Nadu? Of course, the very slogan, anti-Hindi agitation. Of course, that the very Hindu-Hindi belt, of course, we are talking about. The language come, of course, it may be, there are variety of factors when you talk about the regionalism, that, of course, that people belonging to a particular locality, maybe the geographical factors, of course, limited by other demographic factors or ethnicity or cultural factors or political factors or developmental issues. They feel one, of course, that vis-a-vis rest of the others in the nation. Of course, this regionalism for which there are several factors. So ultimately, in what way, that it poses challenge to the unity and diversity or national integrity of the nation. Of course, that in what way we can, that overcome all these things. we're going to discuss in detail. Ladies and gentlemen, today's interaction is centered around this, of course. Welcome to Unacademy, ladies and gentlemen. This is Success Sampath interacting with you, especially on one of the social issues threatening the internal security of the nation called regionalism in India. Why? The context, of course, 2020 mains question, you had one question based on this. They linked with, that the cultural, that assertiveness is responsible for regionalism. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, the people speak in terms of, that, of course, Maharashtra, Navanirman Sena, they are against, the migrant Biharis. Maharashtra for Maratha people. Even you would have watched, that one documentary in the, the Netflix, of course, Bal Thackeray. And of course, later he shifted, that ultimately his stand after meeting, that former Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. He entered into national politics from state politics. That's a different scenario. The same thing happened in the South India also, Tamil Nadu. Anti-Hindi agitation, the Dravidian parties, that it began with, DMK. Of course, you might be aware. The anti-Hindi agitation. And of course, former, Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu, CNA Annadurai, gone to the extent of asking, Dravida Nadu, separate Tamil Nadu. Of course, Nehru threatened, with the National Security Act. That's a different story. Of course, that they took part in national mainstream. They gave up that idea. But what we are talking about that. It is that way. Even northeastern states, that Armed Forces Special Power Act 1958, you have. Otherwise, what will happen? And even the governments, that, interaction with, that those, different factions. National Socialistic Council of Nagaland, Isaac Moiwa, Katie Tenglang, we are talking about. The Bodoland, the Krai. And also the threat to extremism. 13 states, getting affected because of that. Of course, we contained that menace. Operation, Green Hound we are talking about, and several initiatives we took in such a way. But in spite of that, we see now the very Naxalism entering into, that of course, the very Kerala. And of course, that the Manipur has become, the theater for, this Naxalism. Different things, we are talking about. This is apart from, the terrorism, religious fundamentalism. Why? In the state of Tripura, you witness, Christianity-based religious terrorism. Terrorist outfit. It's not only related to Islam. It's not only, that accusing, the Hindu majoritarianism or Islam, religious fundamentalism. Even Christianity, apart from forced religious conversion, the Tripura state, you got, terrorist-based organization. So several, issues, threatening the national security. Of course, this is apart from, persistent issues. Hunger, poverty, malnourishment, maternal mortality rate, unemployment. So regionalism, casteism, communalism. Regionalism is one among those issues we are talking about. That threatens the very fabric of, let me reinforce once again, ladies and gentlemen, unity in diversity as well as national integration spirit. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Unacademy. This is Success Sampath interacting with you. Let me take you in, right? Of course, that before going there, this is, that why it is part of, our general studies. I used to emphasize in several sessions, ladies and gentlemen, when you talk about general studies, which has got the responsibility of, contributing to the tune of, the 1,200 marks out of your 2020. Even if you get, that, ladies and gentlemen, 1,000 marks, you are capable of becoming IAS, you might be well aware. So such is the important role played by the very general studies, whether it is, that the prelims general studies, of course, for which you got, MCQs, 200 marks. The questions are very direct, fact-based. When it comes to mains, of course, in prelims, you got 200 marks contribution when it comes to GS. Whereas in mains, of course, 750 marks. Paper 1, 2, 3. The 3 into 250 marks in general studies of mains, of course, 750 marks. Why? You got an essay paper. Say 2 essays you are going to write completely relevant to this, the general studies preparation. Once you thoroughly done, you need not prepare separately. But of course, you needed some technology, methodology that we will share with you. That's a different story. And not only that, why? When it comes to, that, ladies and gentlemen, the very 275 marks oral interview, the 150 marks almost you can cover. This is apart from your DAF-based information. Ladies and gentlemen, even the optional subject, the paper 2, which is whatever may be, the social science, which is relevant to the current affairs linked, we are talking about. There also you can put something, that around some 100 marks. It is almost an average, ladies and gentlemen, let's speak this way, 1,200 marks, the worthy, the very general studies, what we are talking about. So with 800 plus, you can get any one of the services. With 1,000, I'm pretty sure you can get IAS also. Ladies and gentlemen, let me speak once again. This examination is all about your 50% performance. Gone to the extent of scoring, the 70%, 80% in your school days, college days, can't you get, 50% here? This is very simple. Don't please complicate. And what you're going to do, having joined the service, that matters a lot. Don't complicate the recruitment process itself. For that, you have to understand the strategy, the technology. That's what called smart work. For that, we people are the part of an academy, and we, the people with 25 years of experience waiting there to support you. Only thing, you have to make use of the opportunity available. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Unacademy. This is Success Sampath interacting with you. It's not only that, when we talk about important role played by general studies. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, you can say 70-30, even 60-40 you can say. Because 70-30, when I say 70% of the questions belonging to the dynamic portion, otherwise you call current affairs, the 30% of the questions belonging to static portion, otherwise you call, the resources you consult for that NCERT books as well as textbook. The dynamic portion, when I say current affairs, the various segments of the general studies, what do you have? Of course, you talk about environmental science, science and technology, Indian economy, Indian constitution, and of course, international relations, Indian geography, of course, history, ancient, medieval, modern India. When it comes to mains, you talk about postmodern India, of course, GK portion, of course, art and culture, where or the several segments on the part of general studies, but the effective role played by the very dynamic portion called current affairs, that you meet by reading editorials of Hindu as well as Indian Express, and also Frontline, Yojana, Kurukshetra, Press Information Bureau. You please consult all the the portals of that various portfolios of Indian administration, and Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha TV, important programs like Big Picture, and even NDTV. Of course, you can nothing wrong. You need critical thinking, and also that BBC, that This Week, otherwise that Hard Talk India. Of course, how do you enrich? How do you enrich yourself? It is not that you are not mute spectator there. It becomes your infotainment. You just read them, understand them, take notes out of it. You're going to employ here. So this you meet, of course, this is apart from your base called static portion, NCERTs and textbooks, cutting across, the several segments of GS. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Unacademy. This is Success Sampath interacting with you. The very important role played by general studies, whether it is prelims or mains written, even in essay part of mains, as well as the oral interview, that and as well as the optional subject, that paper 2 of optional, touching the current relevance in the Indian context. Hope you understood the very importance of general studies. Please focus. Otherwise, let me put this way. When you talk about civil service examination preparation, ladies and gentlemen, what we say, are you aware? Civil service examination preparation is all about jack of all, master of one subject. Jack of all, what is the general studies? Cutting across all segments of GS, socio-economic, environmental and political aspects. Whether it is global level, national level, or regional level, or sub-regional level. Think globally, act locally. That way, ladies and gentlemen, you take into account, cutting across different segments, part of GS we are talking about. So, jack of all GS, master of one subject, that's called your optional subject. So, without the support, I'm not including here the role of optional subject, the role of your other interview score and all. But without that, you are talking about, an average around 1,200 marks, that is contributed by, very general studies. Understand the weightage, ladies and gentlemen. Now, you have to link with context. Of course, we are going to link with the recent questions. Of course, that came on the part of, the main examination we call the main general studies, the 2020. We are going to link with the question, of course, how the questions are appearing for this topic. Then there will be elaborate discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, that under regionalism in India, this ism is a negativity. Casteism, communalism, regionalism, even populism. When it is done permanently, if it is done temporarily, it's different. The populism, religious fundamentalism, Naxalism, of course, Nagalim, but northeastern insurgency, red terrorism, you call otherwise, forced religious conversion, majoritarianism, all isms, negativity. You're talking about, at the global level, you speak racism. What happened, that changed, the Trumpism gone because of that. I can't breathe. Now Trump couldn't breathe. 2 times, the twice impeachment done. Of course, you talk about any ism, that of course negativity. This talks about regionalism. Maybe you feel proud, son of the soil theory. I belong to. There is a saying in Tamil, of course, let me translate, don't worry. Tamizhan என்று சொல்லடா தலை நிமிர்ந்து நில்லடா. That's good, fantastic. Love your community, nothing wrong, but it should not be at the cost of other communities. When there is a forum which has got people from other language speaking, that region also, people of other faiths, how come you can say, you can feel proud? That's a problem. And you have to address, the pluralism, cultural pluralism, religious pluralism. Of course, otherwise melting pot, even unity in diversity. Of course, unity in uniformity may not be there. It should be natural effort. It should not be conscious effort. Then it has got its own consequences, ladies and gentlemen. It should not be by force we are talking about. So, even the very constitution, even the very Hindu religion itself talks about unity in diversity. The very Sanatana Dharma, of course, we are talking about. There are some people, that in the middle for political expediency misguiding you. But, very mature people, that well-learned people on the part of Hinduism will agree this. Even Swami Vivekananda spoke about universal brotherhood. He accepted all religions as true, as if, different paths leading to same destination. You might be aware. And also the core principle of Hinduism, that universal tolerance. So these are all the things we talk about, but that's what, even if you talk in religious tone, for great men, religion is a tool for connecting people. For small men, religion is a tool for dividing or polarizing people. You want to be great or small, it's up to you, ladies and gentlemen. We are talking about, so like that, that's the religion based factor we are talking about. The same way caste based, but here we are talking about, you feel proud about your own region, son of the soil theory, maybe a geographical territory, that maybe has got, the uniform culture, limited by culture or historical factors. Otherwise, that the legacy, the inheritance you got because of that, cutting across variety of factors, cutting across various spheres of life. You feel proud, you want to preserve the tradition. That's fantastic, that it is plus, it has got positive effects, that you never give up your root connection. It's not focusing on the root without, that focusing on the, the root. If you focus on the fruit, what will happen? You can't get the fruit. So, that you will always have constant touch with the root. That's fantastic. But at the same time, you have to accept there are other regions also. They will have their own roots also. It is how we can live, that peacefully, amicably, accommodative measure. Instead of, entering into conflict, in what way we can accommodate. What may be the common ground we all can come together. That should be the attitude. It's not, that by citing the difference, we get divided further. The difference should be the complementary to the likeness. The difference should not divide us. Ladies and gentlemen, so regionalism has got positive as well as negative effect. We are going to discuss at length. That there comes another question. If you speak in terms of, as I say, Tamizhan என்று சொல்லடா தலை நிமிர்ந்து நில்லடா. Say you are Tamilian, feel, that proud, that you are Tamilian, whatever may be, that you feel, that this way, that keep your head high. It is that way. What about, when there is a common forum, when there are other people, it will be parochial in nature. It will be called narrow-mindedness. Even the Tamil nationalism spirit, that discussed by some of the political parties in Tamil Nadu, it's called parochialization. When you talk about, that national integration or unity in diversity, where we talk about cultural pluralism, as you see, all these fabrics part of our constitution, letter and spirit. But are speaking about even the very nationalism or patriotism can also be called as, the narrow-mindedness or parochialization when you talk about the world as one family. Vasudhaiva Kudumbakam. The global state system. That is what. So, these are all the things, variety of levels. So, the context decides whether you are parochial or universal in nature. It's not absolutely speaking you are narrow-minded or you are broad-minded like that. So, context decides where you speak, what you speak. The boundary decides. Not speaking absolutely. That may not be possible. That may not be applicable also. Ladies and gentlemen, so I want you to understand these nuances. So, that whether to speak in favor of your son of the soil theory is parochialization or going against national integration, or to give up this, the son of the soil theory that you are speaking, there comes ultimately. First of all, you should be a leader of your own family. You should be leader of your own community. Later, you can aspire to become, the leader of rest of the communities. குடும்பத்துக்கு தலைவனா இல்லாதவன் நாட்டுக்கு தலைவனா. These are all the statements, the people talk for variety of leaders. It's not accusing anybody. I'm talking about, our immediate responsibility I'm talking about. It is that way people talk. But there are several leaders, they take care of only families at the cost of, the national resources. I'm not talking about that also. வீட்டுக்கெல்லாம் வெளிச்சம் போட கொடுத்த பணத்திலே நாங்கள் வெளிச்சம் போட்டு வாழ்ந்து விட்டோம் நகர சபையிலே. Oh my God. So we talk about all those things, that மக்கள் நலம் என்று சொல்லுவார் தன் மக்கள் நலம் ஒன்றிலேலாம். There are guys, political leaders gave up their family and fighting for the nation. And there are political leaders, that that looting the resources meant for nation, taking care of only their families. That's happening. I'm talking about. So hope you understand. The parochialization versus that patriotism. That are the broad-mindedness you talk about. Of course, that our discussion is going to be centered around this regionalism as a concept. There are several factors responsible for this. The son of the soil theory, and you feel proud, and that may go against unity in diversity. At the same time, positive effect. Of course, that you never give up your umbilical cord connectivity. You feel proud to have, that enjoy your connectivity with your own culture, your own history, your own leaders, your own legacy. That's the positive spirit. So there are several factors for this regionalism. The historic and cultural assertiveness, those factors are very, very prime factors, ladies and gentlemen. That is what, and in what way, that the issues can be fixed, that they can be brought under the mainstream. So we are going to discuss, ladies and gentlemen, finally, the resources to be consulted for that. Ladies and gentlemen, this is right time. Let me take you in. One second. Ladies and gentlemen, because in the beginning, that we emphasize the very general studies. Of course, you might be well aware. The very general studies, that we said static and dynamic portion, important role played by the general studies by contributing, to the tune of an average 1,200 marks. You might be well aware. We're talking about it. And also, that the very context we are going to link, I think, no need of elaborating this general studies further because we gave utmost importance. Let me take you to the very context. As I said, that, so 2020, especially general studies paper 1, there came one question for 10 marks, of course, expecting you to write, 150 words. Ladies and gentlemen, the thumb rule. If you want to score 1 mark in UPSC mains written, you are supposed to write minimum 15 to 20 words. That within 1 minute. 15 to 20 words. Because, when you talk about main examination, it's not like prelims. In prelims, you made shading. The very straight question, fact-based question. Direct question. But whereas in main examination, of course, very well, it is subjective. You are going to write something. So that talks about word economy. That talks about time management. That talks about space management. That demands, finally, ladies and gentlemen, practice. Practice makes everyone perfect, including yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a saying in Tamil, Sittiramum Kaipazhakkam, Sendamizhum Nappazhakkam. Tamil mattumalla, whatever may be the language, if you practice everything, you will get. Practice makes everyone perfect, ladies and gentlemen. It is very easy to preach. Practicing is difficult. சொல்லுதல் யாருக்கும் எளிய அறியவாம் சொல்லிய வண்ணம் செயல். சொல்லுதல் யாருக்கும் எளிய அறியவாம் சொல்லிய வண்ணம் செயல். Of course, that. So, it is that way, the people who do what they say, they are the greatest people. Of course, that are you doer, are you performer? Action speaks louder than words. Ladies and gentlemen, practice, practice, practice. That comes, that's the important thing. Of course, it's not a hard work, it is smart work. So for that, you have to understand, the very technology methodology. Of course, you understand. Of course, my discussion is centered around, this particular question. Today, I got inspired by this question, of course. The very recent question of 2020 mains. What is that question? Do you agree that regionalism in India, the ism, that you feel proud about your own, that geographical territory which has got uniform culture or historical factors or legacy. Maybe you feel proud to say son of the soil theory or daughter of the soil theory, whatever may be. So this regionalism in India appears to be a consequence of rising cultural assertiveness. Cultural assertiveness. Because, in the name of, globalization, we connect with the global community. But of course, all individuals are becoming islands. That's another accusation. Parallelly, there came a renewed vigor to focus more on, that to be assertive in terms of, everyone's culture. Be proud about your own culture. That maybe the very, that the protests happen in Tamil Nadu about, that vis-a-vis Jallikattu, you might be aware. So several things, that we are talking about. So the consequence of rising, cultural assertiveness, that you want to say you feel proud about your own past, that all these things we are talking about, that's fantastic. That you feel, ultimately you feel connected with the culture, connected with the history, connected with, your own legacy or art, that architecture or sculpture, whatever it may be, that even inscriptions, maybe, they become, they are announced as, that important, centers, the UNESCO World Heritage Centers, and they ultimately attract, that the tourism potential, you might be aware. There are some different things, but you feel proud. Even India as a nation has got rich cultural heritage, for your kind information. Ladies and gentlemen, that we inherited much. The only thing, that we don't understand the value, it is right time, that we emphasize. Even the very Dr. Kalam who spoke about, that the very point. Of course, India was once a spiritual guru. The various invasions, colonization, we lost our, that our umbilical cord connectivity. We got confused. And even maybe colonization and exploitation, ultimately what happened? We started feeling inferior. Maybe even, that the Macaulay minutes, that the very English medium education we are talking about, and making, that Indians feel inferior, that vis-a-vis the English language. So because language is said to be the vehicle of the culture. The moment, that you destroy language, you destroy ultimately the culture. So that is why, that the most of, that the social movements, maybe, that you call centrifugal tendencies from national integration angle. For them, they feel son of the soil theory or daughter of soil theory. They feel it is their responsibility to preserve the identity, that they are Tamilian or Punjabi or, the Bengalis or Gujaratis or Telugu or Kannadigas or Malayalis, whatever it may be. Because language is a vehicle of the culture. So they do not tolerate, that someone else trying to dictate terms. Otherwise, that imposition of one language over another. Even the new education policy, that there came opposition. Of course, the new education policy talking about, a 3 languages formula. That's a different scenario. But there were several political parties in South, saying that one day fine morning, that the Hindi will be imposed like that. And it's at the same time, it is not, free from criticism also. That in the national highway, how the protests came in. Even the Bangalore, there came, anti-Hindi agitation. Namma Bengaluru, the very slogan. Of course, everything we are talking about, ladies and gentlemen. So, that the regional elements, the trying to assert their own, the culture as supreme. Maybe the consequence, of course, that they are not ready to lose their identity. But of course, fantastic, that you feel proud about your own culture or nativity or historical background or legacy. Of course, that you feel proud about your own leaders of that particular area. Fantastic. At the same time, that you have to understand there are other regions. They will have their own history. They will have their own culture. They will have their own legacy. It is respecting them. Matran thotathu malligayum manakkum. Even somebody else's gardens, roses also will have its own fragrance. And there comes another question. What is the motive behind this preservation of cultural identity or linguistic identity? Is it for vote bank politics? Or by appealing, the voting behavior of the masses in the name of this linguistic shamanism? Do you want to keep them under darkness for long so that they don't know what's happening in other rest of the cultures in the world? For all, the Tamilians, anything beyond, the Tamil Nadu is North India. That's a wrong notion, because I traveled throughout, that India and gave, the different lectures, guest lectures in different cities. There are good and bad people are everywhere. A lot of good things in different parts of India. Why do you miss that? At the same time, where there comes a situation when, that others trying to impose their own culture on you, that is a dispute. That's totally different scenario. But it is not saying that, that feeling, say, I am the superior. My culture is always superior. What about the rest of the culture? This is ethnocentric attitude. You feel proud about your culture. Is it at the cost of other cultures in the world? You feel proud about your region. Is it at the cost of rest of the regions in the world? Is it, is it not affecting unity and integrity of the nation? or that literary spirit. Otherwise, that the very that national integration you talk about, unity and diversity you talk about there, that affects that's related with that internal security related issues, posing danger that ultimately to the peace fabric of the nation. Then peace becomes peace. United we stand, divided we fall. Of course, we should find common ground in such a way so that we can come together and live as one, that feeling that we are all Indians. How long we are going to divide in the name of language, in the name of caste, in the name of religion, in the name of ethnicity? So that is the thing. Even Swami Vivekananda did fantastically. He connected West with the East. He became bridge for the spiritualism of India and also intellectualism of the Western world, or materialism of the Western world. Of course, even the Steve Jobs played the role of connector the same way. You're supposed to be a bridge because building materials are same. Either you can bridge a wall or you can bridge, a bridge. You can construct a wall or you can construct a bridge. The bridge that connects people, the wall that divides people. Ladies and gentlemen, all these identity politics in the name of caste, in the name of religion, in the name of region, in the name of race, in the name of ethnicity, it's going to divide people further. Of course, that is what we are talking about. So, but when we talk about regionalism, as I said, which has got both positive as well as negative. Positive, that you feel proud, that of course you have to preserve your, that native identity. That's, that fantastic. At the same time, it should not be at the cost of other identities. You have to accept the fact there are other regions also, other, the cultures also. And they will have their own history, their own legacy. You should respect that. That's very important. So that demands common ground with which we come together. It's otherwise recognizing the concept called cultural pluralism or unity in diversity or universal tolerance. Ladies and gentlemen, that way we are going to talk, that ladies and gentlemen, elaborate this particular topic, say regionalism in India as a consequence of rising cultural assertiveness we are talking about. Of course, let me take you to the next level, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, of course, you see, that when you talk about, the political identities, otherwise, regional parties. Now we are living in the era where you talk about single largest party rule. Of course, we also recently witnessed coalition politics, where all regional kshatraks, they had their own say in the national politics. Of course, that questioned the very stability of the government also. That's different. That's different we are talking about. So, that single largest party rule that talks about stability, at the same time, that also to some extent, there comes, it's not taking for granted. It's not strained the relationship between strong union as well as, subsidiary state administration. There comes another crime. Of course, that they're ultimately, that unable to withstand this, taken for that granted attitude on the part of central administration, the regional parties, that trying to enforce their authority and trying to preserve their identity. Of course, that whether it is Dravidian parties in the south or Telugu Desam party, of course, in Andhra Pradesh, Trinamool Congress on the part of, that the very Mamta and Assam Gana Parishad of Assam. Of course, that they're all, that because, that the regional parties, that they try to preserve their identities. They try to, that preserve, the interest of their own people. So that's what, all-round discussions or controversies when it comes to Niti Aayog, when it comes to, that center-state relationship talk, or, that interstate, that council, interstate council we are talking about, or even the role of governor. The S.R. Bommai case, that you might be aware, or even the very, that the 15th Finance Commission report, of course, the Finance Commission of India under Article 280, you might be aware. Or even, that the very imposition of GST. How, that everything we are talking about, as if, the states, that complained the recently, they lost their, the finances. Of course, those central government, keep on telling that, through GST council, they are compensated. They are allowed to, that raise money also through loans. Of course, that maintain parity in terms of interest. Also, you might be about all those, stories. Ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about. It is that way. Of course, that even when we were talking about, very new education policy, the 6% of GDP, the social sector allocation, especially education sector, it's a mammoth task. Central government has to cooperate with state administration so as to achieve that, the 6% of GDP. But that's not happening with the health sector. So, that there should be, there should be 12% when it comes to social sector spending on, health and education. But it happened in the case of, that very education allocated, but it's not happening yet. And given COVID situation, we have to think more about it. We are talking about it. And this is very low when comparing with other nations on the part of, the very BRICS or European Union or developed countries. We're talking that way also, ladies and gentlemen. So all these things, ultimately, that the people who feel, that relatively deprived, something which is meant for them has not been, that delivered or have been blocked by central administration. When they feel that way, ultimately aggrieved states, they come together and try to, that assert their own, that identity. They want to preserve their own interests. All these things are happening. We're talking about. Ladies and gentlemen, so this is going on. That strains center-state relationship. Otherwise, that ultimately questions, that otherwise spoils the fabric of cooperative federalism, even competitive federalism, or unity in diversity, or national integration. Ladies and gentlemen, all this cry, that. So we are going to discuss several examples. Don't worry. I think it is right time. Let me take you in. Ladies and gentlemen, before going into regionalism in India, you have to understand the region, first of all. Regionalism, that begins with region, area. Enga area, ulla varade. One slogan. That you feel proud. This is your area, the community sentiment. We the people. Even the Constitution preamble begins with that. We the people. It is that way. So, that Hamara, the belongingness. So, region as a geographical unit is delimited from each other. It has got complete demarcation with the rest of the regions in the, the nation. So, the entity, maybe, that may be, a separate social system. Of course, the uniform culture that reflects the relationship between different human beings and groups. Maybe you got uniform culture within that boundary. You say the community. And their presence for the long time. Of course, they develop that, the sense of belonging or community sentiment. We, they, hamara, tumara, you talk about. It is that way. So regions are an organized, the cooperation in cultural, economic and political or military fields. 1 second, ladies and gentlemen. Let me parallelly check. Yes, of course, we are talking about. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, if you got any queries, you can talk to me. Yes. Hope it is, that audible. Hope it is, ladies and gentlemen. Yes. Got any voice issue, any clarity needed, you can talk to me, share with me. Let me appreciate you. Let me welcome you all to, that Unacademy, especially the YouTube based, the YouTube channel based discussion, ladies and gentlemen. And today also, of course, that the Unacademy Summit 2.0 going on parallelly. Of course, that begins, from 10 o'clock, that after finishing this, you can register yourself, watch that also, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, the regions are an organized cooperation. We are talking about an organized cooperation in cultural, economic, and political or military fields. We are talking about. So it has got uniformity when it comes to culture or historical, the heritage or legacy. That they feel proud. Of course, the son of the soil or daughter of the soil theory is applicable there. So the region acts as a subject with distinct identity. That it has got separate identity when comparing with, it's marked up from the rest of the, the regions of that particular nation we are talking about. A distinct identity, maybe a uniform culture, maybe language. Language is said to be the vehicle of the culture, and tradition, which has got common custom, common tradition, maybe common faith based on religion. Why not? Maybe the common, geographical, the features, the climate. Why not? It is that way, maybe the mountainous region. Why not? We are talking about that way. It's otherwise called a community. The regionalism in India, for that you have to understand first what is the region, ladies and gentlemen. That's our humble attempt. Of course, the regionalism, first of all, when you talk about, as I said, ism is called negativity. The regionalism is an ideology and a political movement that seeks to advance the causes of region. That they've got their own grievances. The grievances should be met so as to take care of, the people of that particular region. That's their priority. So ultimately, that they evolve, they chalk out ideology. Ultimately, they form a particular social movement, like what happened recently, Telangana movement, that culminated in the 29th state of, that India called Telangana, carved out of Andhra Pradesh. Because the people of that particular region felt, that neglected by the greater, that Andhra Pradesh administration. And they were paid back nothing. The same thing, happening in the very Pakistan, Balochistan region we are talking about. How long, that the people felt, that excluded, not included, excluded the very Telangana people. That resulted in, a social movement called Telangana movement, culminated the very administration. Of course, today you talk about 29th state in India. So, but of course, the Andhra is the first state, that sowed the seed of, that the very linguistic based states, out of which, that another state came in the name of, that agenda, in the name of development or underdevelopment, you call. Because this is what we are talking about. When we are one interesting theory you have to understand, when we are talking about internal security related issues, the internal security is getting affected not only because of the reason the people are, that unaddressed when it comes to social issues. Sometimes development itself pushing people to poverty, like, that may be encroachment, special economic zone, or to appease some corporate companies when the government is resorting to, the build some special economic zones, or 8-lane the road projects as we speak between Salem to, the very Chennai, to appease Jindal. Of course, we talk about, so all these developmental activities in the name of economic reforms, when the government is trying to resort, of course, to attract more FII, foreign direct investment, foreign institutional investors, even venture capitalism. Or maybe, the nation has become signatory to the multilateral treaties. That comes its own, responsibility. Or the loans it avail from World Bank, that or International Monetary Fund, like institutions. When it has got its own, that the priorities that goes against our own domestic interests or regional interests we are talking about. So that ultimately the people getting aggrieved or affected in that particular region enter into protest, dharna. So they felt, that socially excluded, they form social movement, they enter into protest. Ultimately, that question, they become pressure group or interest group or symbolic protest happening. That goes against, ultimately the law and order of that particular region, affects peace, equilibrium, that affects economic development, that puts nation down for a while. What happened recently? The Punjab and Haryana initiated the agricultural, that the protest against, the laws meant for, of course, agriculture. So we talk about, that. So regionalism is an ideology and political movement that seeks to advance the causes of the region, because, they feel their regions, get their own region, that is getting neglected, that people are neglected. They come together, form movement. It's that way. So the ism, that they, so to get the attention of the nation or state administration, that or international administration, that actually you got two concepts. When you talk about regionalism, it may be a subnational level or it may be continental level. As you speak, South Asia or European region. So that separate thing, that at the global level, we will talk about that later. So as a process, it plays role within the nation as well as outside the nation at the international level. Sub-Saharan African countries, South Asian countries. When you go to Europe, the racism is there. You may be, that's what Kamala Hassan said once, I believe. I may be fair enough for you. I may be fair in color for you. But when I go to Europe, I am dark for them. You Asians, the racism practice, the regionalism. Of course, racism linked with that. How South Asians are treated in European countries. How developing countries are treated at the hands of, the developed countries in the international fora or global fora. So we talk about all these things, ladies and gentlemen. So it can be talked within the nation or it may be talked outside the nation at the international level. Both types of regionalism, ladies and gentlemen, one second, ladies and gentlemen. So let me honor this. You can also refresh yourself parallelly, please. Sorry. So both types of regionalism have different meaning and have positive as well as negative impact we are talking about, ladies and gentlemen. So the positive as well as negative impact on society, polity, diplomacy, that the relationship between, the two nations, how do we engage the international community or rest of the world. and economy, and also the security affairs, the internal security especially, the very culture or development of that particular nation, and also that the negotiation, how do you engage, that when it comes to the bargaining power. It's that way, ladies and gentlemen. So it can be talked within a nation and outside the nation. Whatever may be, when you say regionalism, it's an ideology and political movement that seeks to advance the causes of that region. You speak for your own region. You represent your region. You feel that your region is getting neglected, so you come together, ultimately enter into the protest as a social movement that affects the peace fabric of the nation, internal security. It is that way we talk. And that it is that way. Ladies and gentlemen, let me take you to the next level. Yes, what is that? At the international level, ladies and gentlemen, at the international level, regionalism refers to transnational cooperation. At the international level, let me repeat, at the international level, global level, regionalism refers to, because I took into account, that I got inspired by the mains 2020 question, but there comes my responsibility to widen your perception, not only restricted to that particular question. Let me, that I take it as an opportunity so that you get, 360-degree information about the topic, ladies and gentlemen, so that you are equipped to face any question of this particular, topic in future also. Hope you understand better. Of course, when it comes to strictly adhere to that particular question, it may look irrelevant also. If you stick to that particular question, I said I got inspired by the question. I connected with the the question of recent mains 2020, but the purpose is totally different. The holistic approach, the wide angle approach. Yes, at the international level, ladies and gentlemen, regionalism refers to the transnational cooperation to meet a common goal, or to resolve a shared problem we are talking about. Say, meet the common goal. Maybe, that address the concerns of developing nations, the WTO, when it comes to subsidy mechanism, like, or to, the Paris Climatic Agreement. Of course, the nations come together for the pledge, ultimately, in the COP21, to mitigate the greenhouse gases, whatever may be, or to resolve a shared problem, that maybe about poverty, maybe about, restructuring of United Nations organization, whatever may be. So, or it refers to group of countries such as Western Europe or Southeast Asia, or linked by geography, history, economic features. It is that way. Even within a continent, the few countries coming together over a particular region to address maybe West Asia, Central Asia. It is that way, ladies and gentlemen. We talk that way. So, used in this sense, regionalism refers to attempts to reinforce the links between these countries' economic features. Of course, not only economic features, other factors also. South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, BIMSTEC, Mercosur, why not? Indian Ocean Rim countries. And it's that way. You can speak many things, ladies and gentlemen. It is that way. Of course, it is right. Let me take you to the next level. But the question is centered around, of course, you know very well. The regionalism is at the national level, refers to the process in which a substate actors become increasingly powerful. Substate. That here, a state, that when I say state, state is otherwise nation. Because in India, we got, that federalism principle, strong center, subsidiary state administration. The subsidiary state administration, it's not confederation like United States of America. In the United States of America, the states can secede on their own. They got dual citizenship also, but it's not in India. In India, strong India, that is Bharat, shall be union of states. That is what. So, when you talk about state, which has got, that it's otherwise, what do you call it? State as a nation, population, its own population, government, it has got its own government, it has got its own PGT, its own, the territory, and it has got its own sovereign power. It's not dictated by any foreign power, and beyond that, it should be recognized by other nations that it is a state. This is what definition of state. So I'm talking about, sub-state actors, maybe the state administration, maybe regional centric administration, maybe the people demand like, Bodo land, Vidarbha, Darjeeling, or why in the Coimbatore region, Kongu Nadu. People demand that way also, I hear. Why not Vani Nadu? Why not Mukulatur Nadu? What is this here? So it is balkanization of nation we are talking about. Of course, all these things are, it's because of the thing they feel they are neglected, limbo. They feel excluded. So there comes a responsibility on the part of the state administration, that in that particular part, as well as nation on the whole, to address the grievances, so that that they feel included. Otherwise, the government is working towards inclusive governance. Yes, so regionalism at the national level refers to the process in which sub-state actors become increasingly powerful. We are talking about the power devolves, but that it devolves from central level to the regional governments. Already local self-government. The democratic decentralization. Already local self-government, you call it, taking the democracy to the grassroots level. Maybe thanks to the Balwant Rai Mehta Committee, the Panchayat Raj institution you speak, even 73rd, 74th constitutional amendments, that you touch for that particular purpose. And now the same way we are talking about the judiciary also, the Grama Nyayalaya bill we spoke. It is that way, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about. So it's not keeping everything in one center. It is devolving. It is delegating the responsibility. It is taking the administration to the grassroots level. Otherwise, giving more freedom to the local bodies, whether it is rural or urban, and it's backed by the financial support. It's not a mere that eloquence or rhetoric in nature. So the power devolves from central level to the regional governments we are talking about. One second, ladies and gentlemen, excuse me. So when you talk about that the very regions, that these are the regions within a country. These are the regions within a country distinguished in culture, language. Just now I said the language is said to be the vehicle of the culture. Got the idea? So, and other socio-cultural factors, a particular region, not only, that united, that by common boundary or common territory or geographical, that parameters like, the climate or location or topographical features like that, and also has got the uniform, the distinguished but uniform culture, and has maybe, that covered by a language, the common language, and other socio-cultural factors, maybe custom, tradition, faith or belief system, whatever it may be. So the several factors, ultimately making a community. People feel we, they, amara, tumara. It is that way, ladies and gentlemen. I think it is right time. Let me take you in. So the regionalism in India is a multi-dimensional phenomenon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a multi-dimensional phenomenon as it is a complex amalgam of. It's a complex amalgam of, geographical, historical, cultural, economic, and politico-administrative and psychological factors too. That when you talk about every nation, that how people are, that the psychological tendency also to some extent. How people are, some nations, people are emotionally neutral, some people are very emotional. That goes the influence of geography or influence of the culture or the psychology of an individual. Influence of that particular region. That otherwise you take how people from rural area different from urban localities. Urban locality people will be emotionally neutral, but rural people will be more emotional, custom bound, tradition bound. The collectivism is the principle or value system on the part of rural people, whereas in the urban area, that individualism, privacy, anonymity. So it is that way. A different kind of value system and its influence. Of course, the reflection of the culture. They have been institutionalized. They've also internalized in their own part. So regionalism in India is a multi-dimensional phenomenon as it is a complex amalgam of geographical, historical, cultural, economic, politico-administrative and psyche factors, psychology, psyche factors, ladies and gentlemen. So it is not possible to indicate exactly a particular factor. It's a combination of, it's a cumulative effect. Our combined effort we are talking about, ladies and gentlemen. No single factor is solely responsible for this that way. So which has been, that solely, it is not possible to indicate exactly any particular factor which has been solely responsible for the phenomenon of regionalism. It's a combination, combined efforts or combined effects you talk about. So therefore, all these factors need to be explained very briefly. Let me take you in, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, some of the most important causes of the regionalism, the feeling of son of the soil theory or daughter of the soil theory. Why? Maybe the common geographical factor or historical and cultural factors. As people say, that Chera, Chola, Pandya or Pallava or Chalukya or Rashtrakuta or Maratha. People feel, Mahachanapadas. It is that way. So we are talking about, that it is that way, ladies and gentlemen. So historical and cultural factors, and that maybe dominant caste or religion, or majority religion or minority religion. It is that way. And also economic factors, developed, affluent, the affordability. We are talking about, that accessibility, affordability as the key factor here too. So economic factors, and also the political and administrative factors we are talking about, ladies and gentlemen. So based on these several factors, that you talk about, when we talk about regionalism, maybe on these, several factors, let me take you in and let's, that parallelly brief, that one by one. Yes. Geographical factor, ladies and gentlemen, just see. People residing in the coastal belt, people residing in mountainized region, and people residing in a desert region, their attitudes are totally different. Or people living in the plain region. Why? Even in Tamil, that the very land has been divided by from Tamil Nadu angle. I'm talking about. The Tamil people may be aware. Other people you come to know. They have divided the very land into Kurunji, Mullai, Marudam, Neidal, Palai, which talks about its own occupation, which talks about its own god or feature of the geography. And that influences the attitude of the people also respectively. So it is that way. So the nature, so how the tendency accordingly, the ideology, the grievances are a thing which they feel proud otherwise. The value system differs. So the geographical factor, when we talk about the territorial orientation based on geographical boundaries, relate to inhabitants of a particular region, which are symbolic, at least in the Indian context. We are talking about maybe that demands, how the people will be. This is more so because of the linguistic distribution along, the geographical boundaries. Accordingly, the role of language also. Maybe linguistic chauvinism, otherwise you feel their own language is, that getting threatened or feel endangered, probably in that sense, there will be more solidarity in them also. There will be more urge on their part, to preserve that particular identity, which they feel it may be extinct in the near future. They are afraid. So the topographic and climatic variations, what we are talking about, along with differences in the settlement pattern, that influences even the very settlement you might be aware. The nature of habitat, of course, influences the nature of, that your housing pattern, everything. And even in Kerala, there is a saying, that how the settlement pattern, that influence the language. Of course, EDI kandilello, that maybe, that the very rugged pattern, it's not uniform, the Kerala. The very, that has got its own influence. Otherwise, Tamil, and it's mixed with, that the Sanskrit also, another factor we are talking about. So, in what way the geography influences the culture accordingly? We are talking about, after all, language is the vehicle of the culture we are talking about. So, topographic and climatic variations along with differences in the settlement pattern, which induce in people the concept of, that regionalism we are talking about. The concept of regionalism, that is getting affected because of that. Ladies and gentlemen, the primary role played by the very geographic factor we are talking about. Let's go to another factor called historical and cultural factor. History, when we talk about the contemporary, it's something about the past. Maybe where we talk about, that what sort of rule, what sort of the heritage, what sort of, the civilization left out. And when we talk about, the very culture, that, of course, which talks about the way of life, style of life. So in Indian scenario, the historical or cultural factors may be considered as a prime components, of the phenomenon of regionalism we are talking about. So it is said to be, even the question is centered around that. So it is the cultural assertiveness is that, because of that, ultimately you talk about regionalism. That is a German. So because that ultimately, as I said, the Marathas, of course, otherwise, separate statehood status. and based on their, because of their grievances, whatever may be we are talking about, ladies and gentlemen. So, in the Indian scenario, the historical or cultural factors may be considered the prime components of the phenomenon called, the regionalism. Ladies and gentlemen, the historical and cultural components, they interpret regionalism by the very cultural heritage, folklore, நாட்டுப்புறவியல், or myth, kattukadai, symbolism, their own symbols, that they may be, that they consider a religious symbol, maybe cultural symbol, maybe caste symbol that way, lifestyle symbol we are talking about, and historical tradition to custom bound, tradition bound we are talking about. So, put together. So, the main way it is getting influenced by historical and cultural factors, because when we say culture, it's a broad concept. Even in the sociological angle, if you speak, that culture is a whole complex which includes everything: knowledge, art, belief, language, literature, custom, tradition. Everything can be acquired by any human being as a member of the society. That's called culture. That's the definition. As I said, everything. So, it's a way of life. Your food habits, your dress style, that your faith system, your belief system, everything put together, ladies and gentlemen. So, historical and cultural factors, they've got, that the prime, that influence over, that regionalism, that too in India we are talking about. And also the people of a particular cultural group, they also derive inspiration. They also derive inspirations from the noble deeds and glorious achievements of local heroes. As a nation, we feel proud about Mahatma Gandhi ji, Subhash Chandra Bose, and and Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, and even Pandit Nehru, and several, that the leaders who fought for, that India's independence, of course, that are India's, welfare. The India should have its own, that position in the global fora, of course. Pandit Deen Dayal Upadhyaya or V.D. Savarkar. Of course, the political differences are apart. I'm not here to, but that different hues for the same objective. And in the Dravidian South, of course, that the socio-religious reform movements, of course, where we talk about E.V. Ramasamy Nayakar, and also, that Sri Narayana Dharma Paripalana movement, of course, that Sri Narayana Guru, and Satya Sodak Samaj, where we talk about, Jyotirao Phule, we are talking about. And several, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Why not? That. So, the noble deeds, the glorious achievements of, that the local heroes, the people feel proud. And Andhra Kesari, of course, the Tanguturi Prakasam, T.K. Prakasam, even a district named after that in Andhra Pradesh. Because it is even the Potti Sri Ramalu, what we are talking about. Of course, the Tamilians feel proud about, that the great national poet Bharadiyar or Thiruvalluvar. Of course, we are talking about the Veerapandiya Kattapomman, or the Chera, Chola, Pandya, the kings, of course, the Pallava kings, of course, the Mahabalipuram, and the very Tanjore, the Bragadishwara temple, and that you feel proud about your architecture, and that even in the temples built by, and the Kerala, the very Andhra Pradesh, where you talk about, of course, the Vijayanagara kingdom, the Krishna Devaraya, of course, Kerala, the Kerala, Cheraputras, we say. Cheras, they are called. And also Maratha, the Marathas, yesterday we celebrated, the Maratha, the great Shivaji. So, every region has got its own, that heroes, local heroes, that of course the noble deeds and glorious achievements, the son, as a son of the soil, or a daughter of the soil, you feel proud. But as a nation, we have to, that celebrate, that this diversity. That's different scenario. It's not feeling proud and and belittling rest of the cultures. That is ethnocentrism. What is needed here? Cultural relativism. You have to respect other cultures also. As Swami Vivekananda said, other religions are true. All are different paths to the same destination. Fact is one, but different manifestations. Same is the case. It is that way, the moment you understand, that talks about your maturity. Ladies and gentlemen, so never, in spite of that, there are sudden political and economic realities, that we are talking about, which can be covered under the gamut of, that historical and cultural factors we are talking about. Maybe sudden political, that there may be some sort of, that maybe a monarchy becoming a democracy. or democratic nation witnessing some sort of emergency as happened, that during Indira Gandhi regime, or maybe sudden law and order deterioration in a particular state, maybe president rule imposed, or maybe think about northeastern states where armed force special power act presence, or even what happened, the abrogation of article 370, ultimately restructuring of Jammu Kashmir region. We're talking about that way. So there are sudden political and economic reality, maybe a sudden economic boom, or maybe COVID situation. Ultimately, that the impact may be different because of their access to the resources. It is that way we talk about, ladies and gentlemen. So, or maybe any disaster like the tsunami, so which can be covered under the gamut of historical and cultural factors we are talking about, ladies and gentlemen. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is right that of course the prime factor is historical and cultural factors. That's responsible for influencing regionalism. How caste and religion, caste system and religion in Indian society play a very marginal role in causing regionalism. Yes, we are talking about regionalism. It's not caste-based regionalism. Of course, I said example. What is that? The Kongu Nadu, the very region. Of course, in Coimbatore, there is subtle agenda. Of course, the people talk about, it is that way. But a religion, I don't think, that, of course, the religion-based, regionalism here. Of course, in India as a country, you got, that several religions, apart from, that the majority Hinduism and, that Islam and Christianity, HM Kitta, civil service, padike pona BJ. This is a quote. What is that? So, that the Christianity, Sikhism, Buddhism, Jainism, of course, you talk about, the Parsi, Zoroastrianism, everything. It is that way we talk about. Though Hinduism is a majority, rest of the religions you call minorities. Ladies and gentlemen, so nobody in the name of, that, of course, but the very Tiripura, where you talk about, religion-based terrorist organization, that's the separate thing we are talking about. So, only when the caste is combined, but the very caste, when it is combined with, that the linguistic preponderance we are talking about, maybe non-Brahmin caste, they do not accept Vishnu as God. They want to say their great grandpa as, Lord Shiva, Adi Yogi Shiva. There are several outfits in the south, that they say, that Shiva's, that the God language as Tamil. This is in contrast to, that the Deva Bhasha, other people call, that some Sanskrit. So it is, Tamil versus, Deva Bhasha, Nisa Bhasha. That's a dispute here in South India. Of course, Dravidians, they contest, they question this, authority of Sanskrit. We talk in several ways. So only when caste is combined with, when non-Brahmin people combined with, the Tamil spirit, that the linguistic, jingoism or linguistic chauvinism or linguistic pride, the moments you talk about, superiority you talk about. So, that, the caste when combined with the religion, of course, you talk about, the Hindi belt. Of course, recently there are several, that cry like that, how, that the people other than Tamil Nadu are seeping into, that the central government jobs. Of course, that the Tamilians, the Tamil political parties are opposing. How through TNPSC by corruption, through, Neyveli Lignite Corporation, how people are recruited, how in the postal department, a guy who is not knowing language of Tamil, how he can be placed. So the thing is, this particular state, the Tamil people feel, that they should be given priority. So there comes that particular notion, the son of the soil theory, or daughter of the soil theory. So these and all, the several allegations, that several disputes that you come across in the newspaper, how people are, that through various political outfits, they level allegations against, that, so, that central administration, whatever may be. So you come across. So when the caste, that combined with, the religion ultimately, even the very, that national party BJP is accused as if it is belonging to, that upper caste party. Of course, to balance that, the leadership on the part of BJP very keen to have, some leaders from Dalit community at the state level. They also, the use, that even the president of India, from Dalit community. So they want, that do away with that particular, that accusation or image. You might be aware. So their conscious attempt towards that. It is that way. So what happened, right? That even the very another party, of course, the Congress party, who always, bank on minority policies, the politics, got reduced to the minority vote bank. That's different scenario. So even the AK Antony of that particular party from Kerala, the ex-defense minister, gone to the extent of instructing other leaders of Congress party, You focused on minority vote bank, you got restricted to your vote bank to minorities alone. You lost your majority votes. So these are all several things. So how the caste and that religion combined with that, of course, that in what way, that otherwise, caste combined with the linguistic preponderance or religious preponderance that may kindle some sort of, that regional feeling we are talking about. It's that way. As I said, the Hindu Hindi belt, that thing we are talking about. So, in spite of that, it may be talking about as Indian, cutting across several religions, you feel unity in diversity, letter and spirit. That is German, you have to understand it is that way. So, that demands level of maturity to appreciate these concepts, right? People who are all, immature, who lack clarity, otherwise, who want to fight for their own self expediency, otherwise, you want to use, that divide people or polarize people, that they bank on all this, that measures to divide people. That's different scenario. That's for their own self expediency. Ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about that. So, caste and religion. The like manner religion, that is not so, that significant except when it is combined with linguistic, homogeneity or based on dogmatism, dogmatism and orthodoxy on the part of religion are linked with economic deprivation. It is that way. So as long as it is not combined with other factors, you need not worry. The moment it combines, that even the non-Brahmin caste, of course, Dalit caste combined with their own economic deprivation, of course, that becomes regionalism. The 20% of vote bank politics in Tamil Nadu, the Dalits, we come across. It is that way. And also, that the linguistic, the Dravidian parties appealing, that very Tamil Nadu state people in the name of, the Tamil language. Of course, even the very Dravidian parties, the whole South India, they've got their own, the cry against, that the North India domination, all these things you come across, even the Chandrababu Naidu, that another voice from Andhra Pradesh for this, that division. Of course, that imposition of Hindi, over South India, all these things, that how they are opposed. All these things we are talking about. Of course, it influences the vote bank politics, you might be well aware. We are talking about. So, something should be natural. Otherwise, it should not be, that by force. It won't work in the long run. We are talking about. So, except when it is combined with linguistic homogeneity, it's not so significant. Or based on dogmatism or orthodoxy or linked with economic deprivation. So, this caste and religion factor may not be significant. You might be aware. So, however, ladies and gentlemen, so regionalism is usually a secular phenomenon, but it's not linked with, that a religion mostly. But the point is, as I said, some places, Hindu, Hindi, the belt, that consciousness. So, regionalism is usually a secular phenomenon because something related to a particular region and which has got, that a common geographical unit, culture, the community feeling, that nothing to do with, of course, that religion we say, but it's not free from that particular connectivity also. But it has got its own influence of the culture, the way of life, style of life, the custom, the tradition. Of course, so in some area, this particular theory may be, that may not be fit in, may not be applicable also. So regionalism is usually a secular phenomenon and in a relative sense, and it can cross-cut the caste affiliation and religious loyalty we are talking about. So it may go beyond caste, it may go beyond religion also. There may be several religions coming together in the name of language, or several castes coming together in the name of, a particular geographical unit or culture, or common occupation, or common religion. Why not? It is that way. So cross-cut, the cutting across caste, cutting across religion, you also see the very religious, the flavor. That is a German. And there are economic factors also. That is a German. Excuse me, 1 second. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Unacademy. This is a Success Sampath interacting with you. Hope you might be already aware. There is Unacademy, that combat. Of course, that Unacademy, not combat. Unacademy Summit is going on 2.0. Please participate. Please register yourself. Use my ID, say success. And several distinguished guests are interacting. Once this session is over, you can participate. You can learn more out of them. Ladies and gentlemen, for that, you have to register. You have to register. How? By using, that my code, of course, success. You please go there. And, that it's my, that humble appeal to you so that you benefit more. That's a free summit. You can participate. Ladies and gentlemen, yes, So, how the economic factors responsible for inducing regionalism? Ladies and gentlemen, if that's a question, of course, in the present times, uneven developments in different parts of the country may be construed as a prime reason, for regionalism and separatism. Uneven developments in different parts of the country. As I told you in the beginning, right? How internal security relation, issues are happening in the nation. When underdevelopment is responsible for pushing people into poverty, sometimes development itself pushing people into poverty. Maybe in the name of government encouragement, special economic zone, or faulty government schemes, faulty government measures, or that non-implementation of the schemes meant for people, or corruption. When development, that underdevelopment pushes, the people into poverty, even development also pushes the people into poverty. So otherwise, that let's somewhere, agree here. What is the point? Uneven development, slopsy in different parts of the country. People feel relatively deprived. They felt, that neglected. They, the state of limbo. Otherwise, they feel they are excluded. Otherwise, that forces them to come together to form social movement. They enter into streets to fight. Ultimately, the protest, pressure group. They become pressure group, interest group. A symbolic protest happen. That questions ultimately, that national integrity. We are talking about, that national integrity. Otherwise, unity and diversity of the fabric. That causes, that law and order deterioration. That, and then that forces further productivity down. Ladies and gentlemen, so that different parts of the country may be construed as a prime reason for regionalism and separatism, the centrifugal tendencies or demand of separate statehood, because it's born out of relative deprivation, something other people are enjoying. Otherwise, they feel they are being discriminated against, or in comparing with the rest of the people, rest of the regions of the nation. So there are certain regions in the country where industries and factories have been concentrated. Certain regions in the country, industries and factories have been concentrated. Educational and health facilities are sufficiently provided. Communication network has been developed, and rapid agricultural development has been made possible. So that varies from region to region. Maybe the political decision or political party ruling in that particular region maybe took initiative, or some political parties, that particular region would have failed. Maybe that is the reason. So, that in one of the political parties, that two erstwhile leaders, they've amassed wealth to the tune of 3.5 lakh crores a year. The Tamil Nadu government's, external debt itself 5 lakh crores. So all these corrupt guys, should be brought together, brought behind the bars. Property should be confiscated, attached with the, that state exchequer. Don't you get, that one single leader? All dramas happening. I'm asking, can't you get one single leader? That leader may be you. That leader may be me. That may happen soon. Don't worry, it's going to happen. How long? How long? That it will happen soon. Don't worry. That's what I'm talking about. People are tired of all these things ultimately, ladies and gentlemen. So certain regions in the country where industries, factories have been, you see the regional lopsidity, regional, that development, regional underdevelopment. Of course, it is that way we are talking about. People feel relatively deprived. This regional differences ultimately, that responsible, that otherwise we are talking about underdevelopment as well as, that uneven development. Otherwise, development itself in the name of, the encouragement, pushing people. Otherwise, agricultural lands are compromised for the sake of favoring corporate, as happened in the, that Trinamool Congress. That Mamta came to power from West Bengal. It's because of that Tata Singur, the nano project. The so-called Communist Party, the Buddhadev Bhattacharya government, which favored the Tata, the capitalists. Of course, I'm not disputing, that Ratan Tata, the great man. That's different. We are talking about, this is ideological angle. The Communist Party favoring the corporate sector at the cost of agricultural lands. That resulted in the change of guard in the West Bengal. Mamta came to power, the very Trinamool Congress. You might be aware. It is that way. So development itself is responsible for it. It's otherwise called the encouragement in the name of special economic zone, the name of 8-lane project, the name of favoring the corporate world. We are talking about that way. So, that regional differences you come across, maybe, that goes with the nature of the political party and its governance mechanism. But there are also certain areas where the worth of independence is yet to be realized in terms of socio-economic development. Maybe the tribal people, Dalit people, when you see maybe the northeastern region, some remote rural areas. So the very the independence that see when it comes to the tribal people, you have to understand the very northeastern tribal people, they benefited more because of the British colonization. Because what happened, right? The you might be aware the missionary activities happened there. Complete Christianity conversion happened there. English education happened there. So northeastern tribal people are that relatively richer people than mainstream tribal people. Mainstream tribal people, that you have to understand, you got two different worlds when it comes to tribal people. Even the Ramachandra Guha, who has written book, the Dissenter, Democracy and Dissenter, you will come to know. So several informations like this. What is the point? The mainstream, the mainland tribal people are very poor people, but they are sitting on rich mineral resources and next to perennial rivers, but they are in abject poverty. But they are sometimes used by very Naxalite as a shield when they fight against CRPF. The Naxalite affected region, you might be aware. But whereas northeastern region, northeastern tribal people, relatively, with high sophistication, because during British colonization, they got converted to Christianity, English education, they developed well. That is what the crime. So because of British colonization, that some people benefited, but because of independence, some regions, some packets of India yet to see the fruits of development. Otherwise, they are under socio-economic development. That particular region, they are likely to that feel this regionalism flavor immediately, especially Dalit people, tribal people, some region in minorities we are talking about. Of course, so the British administration may be held responsible for causing, but it began with British, the discrimination, divide and rule policy. You got the idea, na? They know how to separate electorates. Got introduced. You might be aware the round table conferences. Muhammad Ali Jinnah, B.R. Ambedkar, Mahatma Gandhi. Everybody. Only second round table conference was attended by Mahatma Gandhi. You might be aware. So 1909, 1919, 1935. You know all the stories part of modern India. So the divide and rule policy. Even while leaving, that India-Pakistan division, Mountbatten Plan, what happened? The bloodshed. Even we are yet to, of course, recently abrogation of Article 370, one nation, one constitution we did. How long? But still, of course, that we are talking about, so how many years, we wasted in that sense we are talking about. So the legacy, the British legacy, it's after divide and rule policy. So the British administration may be held responsible for causing such a wide regional variations due to their suitability for the purpose of administration. They are ready to bend. They will customize, personalize according to the conditionality, as long as it works in favor of their own exploitation. That's the thing, na? So, but in post-independence era, the effort should have been made for regional balance. There should have been, separate efforts for this in matters of industrial distribution or agricultural development or above all overall economic development. Why? Even we talk about, when you talk about India, whole India, this particular region you call Chota Nagpur Plateau in India. This region, of course, in the history you call Mahajanapadas. Most of the kingdoms, fought for this to have control over the region. Why? The mineral resource rich region, Chota Nagpur Plateau. Of course, today you talk about, that all coal, iron industries in that particular region. And today, what do you see there? Bhimarao states. Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, of course, this region. The Odisha, of course, Rajasthan here. You talk about Uttar Pradesh. Why? So when the nations, of course, it's Achilles' heel, weakness, India's weakness there. So the Bhimarao states, all the growth story of western and southern states completely eaten away. All is not well here. Completely eaten away by these Bhimarao states. For every 100 rupees, if you're from Gujarat or Tamil Nadu, you'll be getting only 42 rupees back from central pool of resources. Given COVID situation, only 41 rupees back. But whereas, those, that nation, Bhimarao states, they get to up to 220 rupees for doing nothing. They will get more children. They won't make them study. Otherwise, the whole family will be involved and getting into, that the window and that by climbing into, that one floor, two floors into the school and to distribute bits. And they will practice casteism, honor killing, everything. All round social indices dip, but they get more money. But there comes another thing: with more power comes more responsibility. Central government feels, that to take care of the vulnerable first priority. That's different scenario. You got both arguments we are talking about. The same way European Union has got its own pigs: Portugal, Italy, Greece, Spain. Yes, it's that way we are talking about. So, that even India, you got, Bimara states, the complete growth story, the given by, Western and Southern states of India, whose parameters can be equated with the European, the nations, completely eaten away by this, the Bimara states, which is vulnerable region. You might be aware. So the regional imbalance, of course, now some states there, even Rajasthan, some states now for development, even, the very Bihar under Nitish, for development, of course, now Nitish is losing there. That's a different scenario. So the post-independence era, efforts should have been made for regional balance in matters of industrial, agricultural, and above all, economic development we are talking about, ladies and gentlemen. And let me also take in, further, this disparity caused the feeling of relative deprivation. Even the former chief minister of Tamil Nadu, the Karunanidhi, of course, he used to say, "Vadakke vaalgirathu, terke theigirathu." That, so the administration, the center taking care of the north, but leaving out the south like that. So that discrimination, all South Indian, chief ministers used to complain against, central administration. Of course, center-state relation, how the states are neglected, though they were, working hard, performing very well, but they are not given their due share like that. Of course, the coalition politics came, they happened, but when there, as long as, single party rule at the center, of course, regional parties will have their own grievances, you might be aware. So this parity has caused feeling of relative deprivation among inhabitants of economically neglected regions we are talking about. And also that posed ultimately challenge to the internal security, the centrifugal tendencies, of course, the Naxalism, even the very Naxalism, why? It's because of that. The non-implementation of, that Land Reforms Act, otherwise, exploitation by zamindars in their own locality, otherwise, unemployment on the part of educated people. Of course, the Naxalbari in the West Bengal, the Charu Majumdar, the movement, of course, that is a great threat to internal security on the part of the nation. Now, northeastern insurgency, and also, that other factors like, terrorism, you talk about, that's the external security also, religious fundamentalism, and centrifugal tendencies, that, of course, separate a demand for, separate statehood we are talking about. So it has manifested in itself in the demand for separate states such as, Bodoland culminated, and Uttarakhand that culminated along with Chhattisgarh. And the recently, that the very Telangana came up, 29th state in India, the Bodoland, Vidarbha, Purvanchal, Darjeeling, and Kongu Nadu, there are separate, that statehood status, you might be aware. So when you talk about, the political administrative factors, the regional Kshatrap, Dravidian parties in the south, ADMK, DMK, you are talking about here. And also, that the very, the Maharashtra, of course, that Shiv Sena, and, that national, Sharad Pawar, also you talk about. And also the Punjab, where you are talking about, that Shromani Akali Dal, and also the Yadavs in, that the Uttar Pradesh and Mayavadi BSP and Mulayam Singh Yadav, and also the Bihar, Nitish Kumar you are talking about, and Jammu Kashmir, of course, the Farooq Abdullah family. And of course, that you talk about the West Bengal Trinamool Congress and the Odisha. Of course, you talk about, that Naveen Patnaik and, Andhra Pradesh Chandrababu Naidu, now YSR, now Chandrasekhar Rao in Telangana. Of course, you talk about everything, that the Haryana, the Om Prakash Chaudala, the past I'm talking about. He's no more. So it is that way we are talking about, ladies and gentlemen. So the regional Kshatraps, they've got their own say. Ultimately, that they want to preserve their own, the growth story, regional identity. They want to fight for their own share of pie against, the national contribution. Of course, the coalition politics, sometimes, the very administration itself became, unstable. Instability because of this, the coalition politics. So the marriage of convenience later, it becomes, that complete divorce, you might be aware. It becomes marriage of inconvenience later. So that questions the political stability of the administration. That has got impact on the economy also, and attracting FDI, FII, and the signature to, we became signatory to the multilateral fora. That also becomes, question mark. Ladies and gentlemen, that way we are talking about. So what happened, right? Each and every political party, they've got their own ideology, and their, that influencing voting behavior of the the people. Otherwise, vote bank politics. Their complete eye is on that. So the political parties, especially regional parties, as well as the local leaders, exploit the regional sentiment, the regional deprivation, as I said, as I gave you a lot of examples, and convert them to solidify, their factional support basis. Ultimately, that they make aware of the people about their, that neglection. Ultimately, that so they channelize their energy so that it may be utilized, that against that national parties during elections. All these things we are talking about. So they give place to the regional problems in their election manifesto, their priority and promise for political and regional development. So the manifesto, but some of the political parties only on paper, only promise. So that practice, only preaching, not practicing. Only on manifesto we are talking about. That's different story. So in the present day Indian political scenario, some regional parties, have strongly emerged, and captured power in some states, like as I said, Tamil Nadu, Dravidian Party, of course, DMK, then AIDMK, AIADMK, then Andhra Pradesh, of course, Telugu Desam, now YSR Congress, of course, Jagan. So, whereas, Assam Gana Parishad, that in Assam we are talking about, it is that way, regional parties. And Trinamool Congress, where we are talking about, the Mamta there, it is that way. And, as I said, several, the thing, that we are talking about, I think it is right time, let me take you in. That apart, some other regional parties like the Punjab, Akali Dal, and Jharkhand Party, Sibu Soren, Jharkhand Mukti Morcha, you hear, na? And that, and also that, and they pose constant threat to the nation, national integration. It is that. Otherwise, you can construe this as if unity in diversity. There should be a common ground with which we have to come together. So regionalism reached a stage where it is equivalent to be an internal security threat to the country we are talking about. It has become negativity. It has become ism. On the one side, that it's appealing, it's trying to preserve its identity, and that strengthening its root, art and culture, and respecting its own, that leaders, the legacy. That's fantastic. But the moment that ultimately you fight for your share of pie more, it is at the cost of rest of the parties. Of course, cool. Then it becomes that ultimately threatening the internal security of the country and causing friction among the states we are talking about. Friction, it causes friction among the states. Ladies and gentlemen, this is right time. Let me take you to the next level. What is that? So why regional disparity still persists? You can ask me that question. That, so having gone, that this is inequality. I don't think. I think when it is the small version, you will get more resolution. See, widening inequality. That you might be aware at the global level, national level, everywhere. 10% of the population controlling 90% of the resource. Inequality all round you talk about, rich gets richer, poor gets poorer. Even globalization, that reinforcing that particular stand, you come to know. Ladies and gentlemen, we are talking that way. You come to know, that you see, that very tallest building, as well as that slum dwellers parallelly in the very city, the nearby vicinity, that the urban poverty called ghetto you talk about, it is that way. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that let me take you to the next level. Yes, why regional disparity still persists? The low rate of economic growth and socio-economic and political organization of the states, and low-level infrastructural facilities in the backward states. Yes, like Bhimarao, and low-level social expenditure by states on health and education. Social sector spending is less. Of course, in education, we have gone to the extent of 6% of GDP, but in health, it is even now 1.5%. You might be aware. So the combined together, it should work towards 12%. That is what the cry, and we have to reach. I'm sorry. So the political and administrative failures parallel we are talking about, and also the notion of son or daughter of the soil we are talking about. So the regional disparity still persists. Why? Maybe it's maybe based on chauvinistic angle, or feeling superior about your own locality, that angle. Failure of all administration or political parties and their promises, and less spending on social sector, and the investment, that big ticket investments in the backward regions less, and maybe it becomes negative, or socio-economic and political organization of that particular states. Maybe that coalition politics, maybe hung parliament, hung legislature happens several times. Instability, or maybe corruption, Otherwise, identity politics at the cost of that the development of that particular region, or low rate of economic growth, maybe for that several factors, maybe apart from corruption, failure of administrative setup, maybe that that they are not blessed with that much resources in that particular region. Even that it attracts poor investments. Several reasons we are talking about, ladies and gentlemen. So regional disparity still exists. Why? Based on these reasons. We can also elaborate to some extent, that in that sense, the economic growth of India has been fluctuating since independence. You might be aware. It is after economic reforms up to 2008, we were heading towards double-digit GDP. But after that, global recession came, we came down. You might be aware. And when we were battling that economic growth, the very COVID crisis came, worsened the scenario. Now we are talking about revival. Of course, recently what happened? The public sector disinvestment, though it got initiated from the UPA regime, the new economic policy, loss-making public sector units we sold in the name of public sector disinvestment and keeping strategic and core sectors. Nowadays, what happened, right? We came to the conclusion, we've come to that level to think, that the government's business is not to do business. Government business is not to run the hotel. Recently, that the public sector, of course, that the sales, we are talking about the recent budget to the Air India, BPCL, that it's not only new, it's not new. Several things happen, even during Atal Bihari Vajpayee regime also, the 12 sectors. We're talking about, ladies and gentlemen, of course, to mobilize 1.75 lakh crores to address, Atmanirbhar Bharat, by not taxing the very population. Of course, they've got their own, limitations, that they are working. Of course, that it's a paradigm shift we witness in the name of economy. We move from socialistic pattern of economy and towards, capitalistic economy. Otherwise, more of economic reforms. It is that way, that freedom, a laissez-faire concept is, that more practice pronounced nowadays. You might be aware. At the same time, when developed countries who practice, the capitalist economy or free market economy, they themselves going towards centralized market control. Why we are hasty in embracing economic reforms? There comes another question. Maybe the government's, that realization. That's why self-reliant economy, Atmanirbhar Bharat. Further, they are working towards self-reliance in energy security. First of all, you might be aware, that it's a several factor centric games. It's not, by taking to one factor you can accuse the government. That further you have to understand everything the holistic perspective. It is very easy to curse the darkness. Rather, we can light the candle, right, ladies and gentlemen? That demands, more understanding, holistic perspective. Yes, the economic growth of India has been fluctuating since independence, no doubt at all. And COVID crisis, it's a global menace, worsened the scenario. But with respect to high population growth, the economic growth has been not enough to catch the development. We were talking Hindu rate of growth. Thanks to economic reforms, liberalization, privatization, globalization, double-digit GDP. Today we are talking about not only that, the very liability became asset. The very population, the population dividend we are talking about, demographic dividend we are talking about. India is the youngest country in the aging world. This is apart from our, the globalization induced or reforms induced or economic reforms induced economic growth story. But that particular young population should be enabled, skill enablement we are talking about. Otherwise, they become liability. It becomes demographic disaster. Even Nandan Nilekani, in his Imagining India, the TED Talks he used to mention, you might be well aware. So, in the last decade, the economic growth were progressive, but now they are reeling under influence of whole economic crisis, global recession, and also bottlenecks at the domestic level. You might be aware why the COVID crisis. And several things we are talking about, ladies and gentlemen. It is that way, that, and we are yet to improve our manufacturing sector. Of course, by 2025, at least, that 25% the growth should be there for a manufacturing sector. For that, Make India campaign, self-reliant economy or Atmanirbhar Bharat, we are working towards it. How long you can run the country by importing? There should be a trade surplus. We are talking about it. Otherwise, it should be, that export-oriented, the production, even in agriculture sector. And thanks to service sector, which contributes 55% of GDP, you might be well aware, ladies and gentlemen. And we have to do more when it comes to manufacturing sector. We are working on it. And parallelly, generation of employment, that's very important key. So all these things, that we are talking about, ladies and gentlemen. So the states have been unable to do adequate land reforms, and the feudal mentality still persists. Of course, that you see, that there are in the rural area, how it is under the control of all those, landlords, and they've got their own political affiliation. and they survive by switching over loyalty. Whatever may be the party, they will stick to preserve their own lands. You might be otherwise, the Binami transaction would have happened properly. All the efforts we took in the past, Bhudan movement and Gramadhan movement, that Acharya Vinoba Bhave, you might be aware, after independence, were not enthusiastically carried, and even land under land banks, that were not efficiently land for the landless. No, not happening. We are talking about, of course, that rich gets richer, poor gets poorer. Even the green revolution, globalization reinforced that, rich gets richer, poor gets poorer. Otherwise, the globalization going against, the domestic, that industries. All these things we are talking about, ladies and gentlemen. The negativity, of course, this is apart from positivity we enjoyed. We are talking about. So the political activities, all these negativities, they had impact on regionalism. We are talking about. So the political activities in the backward states were limited to vote bank politics and camps, ladies and gentlemen. So the dominant caste who have got access to the vast lands and their access to political power, the vote bank politics, they reinforce that the traditional position is getting that re-emphasized once again. It is that way that formalized once again. And also several scams we come across. Of course, these guys later. It is that way, at the global level also you see, that widening inequality, the same way at the domestic level. So lower level of infrastructural facilities in the backward region. So when you talk about, the power distribution, irrigation facility, even we are talking about interlinking of river projects, but which is not free from, that other issues we discuss in another video. Please watch them. Those central government coming forward to, that declare them as national projects with 90% of, that the financial support. It's not free from disputes, you might be aware, and seismic or geographical or environmental, that non-viability we are talking about, ladies and gentlemen. But of course, four priority, the projects taken into account, the seven priority, and including the projects like Ken Betwa and that the very Godavari Kaveri, like that you might be well aware. This is apart from that other blocks we are talking about. So the power distribution, energy security, of course, that our focus on renewable energy resources now, that to solar energy, where India has got huge potential and as having become architect of International Solar Alliance. How? But is it percolating down to the masses? That's very important. Is it addressing the ground reality where we have to think about it? So the power, irrigation and infrastructural, roads, ports and modern markets for agricultural produce we are talking about. Even agricultural, that the laws recently, that culminated some sort of, unwanted protest, of course, we are talking about. Of course, that became, that, of course, Supreme Court intervention, the state government saying, respecting Supreme Court order, now in the state of suspension, suspended animation, now we are talking about. So all this, that what we are talking about, the state list subjects, got the idea? So lower level of infrastructural facilities in the backward region. Of course, Bimara states very clear for your understanding, ladies and gentlemen, Bimara states in India here. So the low level of social expenditure, that's what we said. Social sector spending, education, tick, 6% of GDP done. But health, is it 6%? No, only 1.5%, which is below Brazil countries, other developed nations. We have to work more, and it's a wake-up call given COVID situation, ladies and gentlemen. But even within India, you got regional disparities, western and southern states, especially Tamil Nadu has got the frontline, health infrastructure, you might be able. So that's why, that the people from different parts of India come there, you might be aware. So, in spite of that, we have to do more. So, that these subjects are core for human resource development we are talking about, the health and education. So the government's focus should be more. So otherwise it will lead to social exclusion or neglection felt on the part of the people. They felt deprived. That ultimately, that forms social movement leading to regionalism that threatens national security as well as national integration or unity in diversity or cultural pluralism fabric of the nation. You might be aware, ladies and gentlemen, once again. Welcome to Unacademy. This is Success Sampath interacting with you. Ladies and gentlemen, yes, the states which have invested heavily on these subjects fall under, developed and advanced states. Of course, states like Tamil Nadu, where healthcare services in primary health center is a benchmark for other states. A lesson to be learned from Tamil Nadu. Of course, that Kerala also, that a forefront in several initiatives. Of course, the euphoria is not long lasting in it when it comes to COVID handling in Kerala. Of course, they are struggling. That's different story. But otherwise, that the western and southern states, they are always forefront in terms of that social development projects you might be aware when comparing with Bimarav states or rest of the parties, rest of the states in India or rest of the regions we are talking about. So, ladies and gentlemen, political and administrative failure. That's another reason. So, the source of tension that gives birth to sub-regional movements or separate states. What happened in Telangana? Because that region got neglected by Andhra Pradesh, resulted in separate state. The same way, development is the agenda. Language is not the agenda for state creation. Development is the agenda, and also the tendency: smaller the states, better the administration. But this balkanization tendency is totally against the global tendency where nations coming together to form blocks or union like European Union, African Union, why not Asian Union in future? This analysis, that will be fantastic, ladies and gentlemen. You think that way. So Jharkhand, but it is justified in the name of development. It is justified in the name of addressing the grievances on the part of the people, where we come to know smaller the states, better the administration. Even the bifurcation of bigger district into smaller, the two districts, same way we are talking about. So more officials, more focus, more resource, more infrastructure. That the productivity will be maximum. People need not run pillar to the post, need not travel to the district headquarters or state headquarters. So, that it is that way. The less, the paperwork and more governance, more benefits for the people we are talking about. So Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Uttarakhand, and recently Telangana are the result of this. The failure on the part of administration, of course, led to the mushrooming of or creation of that the new states, separate states we are talking about. Ladies and gentlemen, many such demands are in the pipeline. That's what I said in the beginning. Vidarbha, Purvanchal, the Darjeeling, Saurashtra, Bodoland, as I said, Kongu Nadu, the subtle agenda in the Kongu belt. These failures also weakens the confidence of the private players and do not attract investors. So when the region is backward, when it is unstable, otherwise people may be, highly, coming to the streets and entering into protest, that they are afraid, that to put their investment in that particular region. That goes against, foreign, the direct investment, institutional investor, even venture capitalism. That goes against, the overall national development. It's not really affecting the peace of the nation, the internal security of the nation. That further questions the economic development of in the near future. So these are all the things, that the ramifications we are talking about. Ladies and gentlemen, let me once again re-emphasize Unacademy 2.0. Ladies and gentlemen, of course, Unacademy Summit, of course, a 2-day summit is happening, that February 20th and 21st. Ladies and gentlemen, of course, you can register yourself, use my code, say success. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a free summit. The distinguished guests coming there and talking to you, interact with you, you will benefit more, ladies and gentlemen, and you participate, please. That it take time. Once this session is over, you can participate there. That started, by 10 o'clock, ladies and gentlemen, you understand. Yes. So what is that? The effect of this, what happened? This regionalism gives, a separate kind of attitude called regional attitude, because of the proud, that attitude on the part of the people, son of the soil or daughter of the soil, that notion, that has its own, that impact on national unity of the country, or unity in diversity fabric of the country, or cultural pluralism, or melting pot, of the country, we are talking about. So the regionalism, that is a feeling or an ideology among, that sections of people residing in a particular geographical space characterized by unique language, culture, and they are the sons of the soil or daughters of the soil. And every opportunity in their land must be given to them first, not to the outsider. That India for Indians, as Trump said, America for Americans. Why not India for Indians? Number one. Then there comes another quote: Tamil Nadu for Tamilians, Andhra Pradesh for Telugu people. Even Telangana may speak that way. Maharashtra for Maratha people, Kerala for Keralites. The priority may be okay, good, but that you need support of other people also. That no single system, single region is complete in all aspects. Interdependence is the core principle of life. Of course, we understand the priority should be given. At the same time, it can't be done with that only of that particular that area people alone. So interdependence is the core principle of living. You are not self-sufficient. That. So it is that way I'm talking about, ladies and gentlemen. So naturally, you have to depend on others, the people of other regions, for your resources, for leading a successful life. When that's the scenario, of course, priority is okay. So that's why they oppose, that priority given to other outsiders. So as I said, the quoted, the Tamil Nadu, how, the Naval Lignite Corporation, where the public sector unit, how the people from North India were, recruited, that, that no single Tamilian. So there are several reports we come across in the newspaper. Hope the central government will address. And also even the TNPSC recruitment, North Indians joining in Tamil Nadu services as if Tamilian, not even knowing Tamil, that by corruption measures, some reports. I don't know what those guys are doing. Eh? When Palwadi guy has become, member of TNPC, what will happen? State Public Service Commission. I don't know what that governor is doing. Of course, at least, that central government should do something. Of course, they are doing several things. They can do this thing also, so that they've got their own mandate in the forthcoming election. If they do that way, they have to do that cleaning mechanism. Cut at the supply level. Come on. So it is that way we are talking about. It is a sort of, parochialism. So it's a narrow-minded talk. Of course, that's what I'm saying. So when you speak for your own state, that goes against national integration. When you speak for your nation, maybe patriotic flavor, that goes against, the global state system concept, where you may be called parochial in nature. So the context decides what is right, what is wrong. So it is not wrong to, that love your community, but your love towards your community should not be at the cost of others. There should be a balance. Otherwise, there should be a common ground where we all should come and share that, that a ground, so that we live amicably by accommodating others. It's called, the cultural pluralism, unity in diversity. The unity by uniformity, if it is natural, that's different. But unity in diversity alone will work. The unity in uniformity, if it is by nature, works. If it is by force, it has got different consequences. Ladies and gentlemen, there should be a conscious effort. But history is nothing but history of few individuals. The very lies we believed in. Of course, that we don't know other side of the coin. As said, as written, we understood history. We are speaking now. So you have to see other side of the coin. That's totally different module. We are talking about altogether different argument. So it is a sort of parochialism in most cases. It raised for expedient political gains, but not necessary. You are the idea now? It is that way we are talking about, ladies and gentlemen. This feeling of attitude, what we are talking about, that, so the regionalism as an ideology, we are talking about. So regionalism puts regional priority above the national priority. So each and every region thinks that way. That's fantastic for the region. At the same time, there should be consensual approach. Otherwise, that will be impairing the national development. We have to identify the common ground, so we all should come together, accommodate. So then only the cooperative federalism, competitive federalism, unity in diversity, cultural pluralism, everything will be realistic, ladies and gentlemen. But at the same time, the positive effect you have to understand. So that it ultimately, that the people practice regionalism, they will appeal the local mass in the name of local art, local culture, the local legacy, local history. It is that way. That's fantastic. But negativity, that goes against national integration. We're talking about, so the roots of regional consciousness in India, ladies and gentlemen, that can be found in colonial policy. The British, that who divided the country, divided and rule policy, might be there. So the differential attitudes and treatment by British towards different princely states and those of presidencies. But of course, even the management, this is what the concept. Different yardsticks for different occasions, that's called leadership, they say. But same thing British people practiced. But when it went against India, we are talking about divide and rule policy, division of labor. So what is right in management concept when it comes to governance in India, that too exploitation practiced by British people against that Indian people, where it is wrong. The context decides whether it is right and wrong. Nothing is absolutely correct, nothing is absolutely wrong. The right and wrong notions are decided based on the context. There is a German. So differential attitudes and treatments by British towards the princely states and those of the presidencies developed regional tendencies among them. It's that way. So they sown the seed of the separatism, you might be aware. Ladies and gentlemen, so the British exploitative economic policies. Yeah. Completely neglected, that some regions and giving way to the economic disparities and regional imbalances we are talking about. So, economic disparities, regional imbalances has got its own root in British exploitative economic policy. They neglected. The people felt aggrieved, relatively deprived, very well. So, on the other side, Indian national movement, but we are talking about British exploitative policy. But what about our people who fought for India's independence? The Indian national movement, a mass movement that became mass movement because of Gandhiji's entries and sacrifice of all our the leaders. We have to respect them forever. So Indian national movement furthered the pluralistic idea, that it's cutting across all religions, all castes. People of the different regions came together with one agenda. The Swaraj, self-rule, Purna Swaraj. Of course, later it became India's independence, the liberation from the clutches of British exploitation. That became the priorities after several sacrifices of our several leaders. Well. But is it that growth story, benefiting the people? Even today, we continue the same. There comes another question. So the history of regional developments in India can be traced back to that 1940s Dravidian movement. Of course, the non-Brahmin, anti-Brahmin movement. Of course, E.V. Ramasamy Naikar, the Periyar. Later, it became political party Dravida Kazhagam, out of which came Dravida Munnetra Kazhagam under leadership of CNA. The former Chief Minister C.N. Annadurai. Of course, a great scholar. You might be aware. And that started, that, of course, out of which came later, the AIDMK under MGR, actor MGR, you might be aware. So then Jayalalitha continued that. After that, now some other guys took over. So that started in the present day Tamil Nadu. We are talking about. It is that way. So the movement resulted in the demand for separate and independent Tamil state. We are talking about the movement. Of course, even during CNA, Annadurai, the former chief minister, the Arranjar Anna, we call, of course, that. So that time itself, he spoke about, separate Tamil Nadu, Dravida Nadu, even, that all those periodicals came, you might be aware. And he was, that a follower of, that the great E.V. Periyar, who fought, that for the superstitious belief and anti-Brahmanical stand, you might be aware. It's a separate. But of course, Dr. Subramaniam Swamy says, this Aryan Dravidian thing is bogus for self-expediency. He has got his own logic. Of course, that people say, that you don't want to be part of the national mainstream. It's almost, you want to cut off yourself from the mainstream. There comes altogether another question. Are you having sufficient resources? But of course, they've got their own inspirational stories. But by showing, a country like, that Singapore, of course, that's a different story. This is in turn led to several other parts like, that Telugu Desam Party and springing up in the Andhra region with the demands of separate statehood. Of course, there we linked with, Potti Sri Ramalu. Of course, the linguistic creation of states. That language-based, the state creation we spoke. So the wave of political regionalism, happened in India, you might be aware. Of course, how? Because of the States Reorganization Act 1956. So that linguistic states became a reality we are talking about. And also 1970s and the 80s, we are talking about the separate statehood, from northeastern, the states. Of course, that culminated in the Northeastern States Reorganization Act 1971. Because of the intensification of tribal insurgency, tribal rebellion. Even today, you talk about that particular, the Northeastern, the tribal, the insurgency as part of internal security related issues. We are talking about, ladies and gentlemen, the unfinished agenda. We are talking about, of course, it upgraded, that's why the Armed Force Special Power Act 1958 presents there, and sometimes they indulge in excessiveness. The Tangjam Manorama, Iram Sharmila, you'd have heard about all those stories. And the National Socialistic Council of Nagaland, Isaac Moiva, the government, that successfully 2015 entered into, that dialogue in controlling, all those, that the insurgency operations, you might be aware. And especially the initiative of Modi administration, you might be aware. So it upgraded, that the union territories of Manipura, that statehood status for some of the union territories also happened, you might be aware. But in 2000s witnessed vigorous movements for the creation of separate states due to rising of a sense of regional deprivation. Of course, you talk about there, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Uttarakhand. Of course, recently Telangana, the 29th state of India. We speak that way, ladies and gentlemen. So, political scenario with national parties emerging as the single largest party, and they are also accused they are neglecting regional parties. Otherwise, regional parties feel, that they are threatened because of their small size. Of course, hence the feeling that national party may not understand the regional sentiments of smaller state is strong. This feeling of deprivation, this ideology, that this relative deprivation is the key. That's responsible for this regionalism tendency, ladies and gentlemen. So the BJP as a party that has traditionally been dominated by upper caste men and the cow belt, Maharashtra, people call it is that way. Of course, now they are trying to balance that image with incorporation of, that non-Brahmin leaders or dominant caste of different regions, that now they are incorporated. And also, the Dalit leaders now into fray. So they want, that do away, that with that particular image. Ultimately, they are trying to do, taking a lot of efforts, you might be aware. So this reverberates in the party ethos or ethos, and doesn't strike a chord with regional parties. That's why. So, that they feel, that neglected or relative deprived, the regional parties, that the feeling of, relative deprivation, that's leading to, that the very regionalism. Not only that, several measures taken by, the government of India, especially the reform, perform, transform, even the Modi ji's administration, the clear slogan, perform or perish. So, because, he's a man of action, a source of inspiration for several youths, you might be aware. And we have to appreciate, of course, that he needed strong team we are talking about, and that's different story. So the measures such as, that GST have left little for the states to plan their, their economy. Of course, they are fighting for compensation. The GST Council, what's happening. And also, the states were asked to mobilize resources. And of course, the central government did everything, the simplification of taxation, of course, which earns, more than 1 lakh crore, you might be aware, that's fantastic. But one nation, one tax, but it goes against the financial autonomy of the states. That is under threat. That's why the cry in Niti Aayog or Finance Commission Article 280, even the 15th Finance Commission talking about the performance-based incentives. And that's a different story we are talking about. So states like Kerala, Maharashtra, Punjab, Tamil Nadu and West Bengal are seeing this as sort of, war against more powerful central administration. So western and southern states, that they enter into, that it is that way, that when you speak of your regional identity, is it going against national identity? But of course, Mahatma Gandhi gave answer. At the end, I'll give you. Don't worry about it. Ladies and gentlemen, it is that way. We are talking about, a sort of cultural domination of Hindu Hindi party is threatening other states. And that could be, the recent 2017, that anti-Hindi protests in Bengaluru, Bengaluru and also Bengaluru metro episode, and also national highways, that the Hindi letters were, that darkened, because everywhere, that either English or Hindi. What about the locals who knows only Tamil, how they can? So, these are all the measures, that should not irritate people, that ultimately drifts them away from, that national sentiment. So, we, that the people concerned should take care of all these sentiments, of course. So, politically, the emergence of fewer power centers and the top-down approach, that is what happening. So, that approach ultimately spoiling the age-old establishment of nationalism or patriotism or national integration or cultural pluralism spirit we are talking about. So, which seems to have seeped into every program of, the single largest party ruling at the center. It's not, that only, that the very BJP party, and even the Congress also, that did that some way. We talk about that way. So, the government is denying, the space to other forms of government. So, central preoccupation is more than the subsidiary state administration spoiling cooperative federalism, competitive federalism. So, hope the government should be very keen, that in these, that sentiments to address the grievances of the people, that who feel relatively deprived, so that it works in favor, that more solidarity. Say, for example, in Tamil Nadu, recently there is a shift in focus. Hitherto we address, the Sri Lankan Tamil ethnic issue only from Tamil Nadu, Dravidian party angle, because, that influences the voting behavior of Tamil parties, the Tamil people. So, first time, that the very, central government started looking at that particular issue from national angle. Hereafter, we won't look from this angle. But of course, even Congress tried that way. Indo-Sri Lanka peace accord, of course, we paid heavy price. The assassination of Rajiv Gandhi by LTTE, that's different. So, after that assassination, they lost sympathy from Tamil people also. That's different scenario. Because there is no solution through violence. And from national perspective, that as a nation of Panchsheel policy, you should not poke your, the nose in the internal affairs of any nation. Will you tolerate Pakistan interfering in Jammu Kashmir? China interfering in, the northeastern region? So there comes another thing. Ultimately, all these things, from nationalist perspective, that is why, that it's the new perspective when it comes to Sri Lanka from national angle. So hereafter, we should not look at Sri Lankan Tamil issue, ethnic issue, from Tamil Nadu perspective or Tamil Nadu political parties perspective. It should be looked upon, looked at, from national perspective. That is a paradigm shift we are talking about. So the regional movements often result in violent agitation, disturbs not only law and order situation, but also have negative implications on the economy of the state as well as nation. What happened in Delhi, the agriculture protests, the Punjab, Haryana. Okay, that, so it that that's unbecoming on the part of those people to choose that day to tarnish the image of the nation. Of course, that's different thing. We can have infight, we can solve, but how come you can project, put ourselves, that in the wrong scenario, especially on the day? Oh my God, the Republic Day we are talking about. So it is that way, that there comes, that responsibility on the part of opposition parties, or the responsibility on the part of media, or other, that elements trying to destabilize the nation, maybe the forces of Khalistan, whatever may be. So regionalism sometimes undercuts the national interest by being a hurdle in the international diplomacy, as it happened, the relationship between, that very India and Sri Lanka. So for instance, the opposition of regional state parties of Tamil Nadu against the stand of the central government, that happened several times, whether it is MGR administration, Karunanidhi administration, Jayalalitha administration, had direct implication on the Sri Lanka, the very relationship of India with Sri Lanka. You might be aware, we are talking about why. Even in Bangladesh, when it comes to, that the land boundary agreement or Teesta River, the water sharing, especially the West Bengal administration by Trinamool Congress and its disagreement with central administration measure when it comes to with Bangladesh, that resulted some sort of crisis. Now Bangladesh is feeling very bad about India, you might be aware. So, that this and all the things, spoiling our neighborhood relationship. Even Modi ji's administration, first tenure was fantastic in terms of the neighborhood policy, but second tenure, relatively, we have to fare more. And also abrogation of Article 370 and its impact on, the Indo-Nepal relationship, the region like Lipu Lake, several things we are talking about. There is enjoyment. So in what way, the relationship between India and Bangladesh is getting strained because of the West Bengal's opposition from domestic angle. So increased tension between the two nations. Not only that, the citizenship amendment bill also we are talking about. So, several things like this. Ladies and gentlemen, so regionalism can be a shield, but if they preserve regionalism, probably it can shield for militancy, as happened, the Jammu Kashmir, and extremism to create internal security threat. What happened? That ultimately, that we were forced to resort to, the Balakot incident. Of course, after that, suicide bombing, the 40 soldiers got killed. You might be even, that we brought back our Abhinandan, that the wing commander. Rest of the things are story. The Pathankot, the very attack, everything we are talking. So Kashmir militancy is an example of, the jingoism in the region leads to the same way Khalistan we are talking about. Same way Khalistan, certain actions of the government, such as the decision of the Finance Commission to use 2011 census data instead of 1971 data. What happened? It went against states like, the Kerala, Tamil Nadu, West Bengal. They did fantastic job when it comes to population control and also empowerment of women when comparing with states like, Bimar states, but they have been penalized. So you reduce population, proportionately it's going to be, that number of MPs representation. So for performing well, are you getting penalized? So that's a cry. Even the 15th Finance Commission, that this effort, these states are, that opposing, you might be aware. And not only that, the very parochial regionalism, that the Maharashtra for Mumbai, that Marathas, and Tamil Nadu for Tamils, Andhra for Telugus. Won't you go out of that? It may be good, give priority, give, that feel proud, but it should not be at the cost of other people. Interdependence is a core principle of living. Ladies and gentlemen, the moment we give up, it's over then. So that's a core principle. So anti-migrant or anti-Bihari stand of the Maharashtra Navanirman Sena, which oppose the employment and residence. That's what I said, even Shiv Sena, Bal Thackeray, you watched that, Netflix Bal Thackeray documentary. Later, he changed his mindset after meeting Indira Gandhi, the former Prime Minister. He participated in the national mainstream. That's a different scenario. Even the same way Tamil Nadu anti-Hindi agitation. And of course, when it comes to Kaveri river water issue, how it spoils, the Tamil Nadu and, the very Karnataka, the law and order deterioration, of course. There comes, that the people from different states, that accusing each other, indulging in violence too. Of course, all these things we are talking about. The prime example of the negative regionalism, isn't it? So regionalism you can practice in positive way as well as negative way. Negative way in the sense that goes against internal security, that goes against unity and in diversity fabric or cultural pluralism, even threatening the very national integration. It is that way we are talking about, ladies and gentlemen. And also, that the very, even the agricultural protest where we, that the central government suspected the presence of the Khalistan cry. They came up with few agenda when they started protest. After that, the list was going on. It is that way. So the regionalism beyond a point can lead to secessionism, secede away. That let me go out of the mainstream. Maybe centrifugal tendency, as we spoke in the beginning. Such a strong regionalism in Punjab ultimately resulted in the growth of Khalistan terrorism and often promotes, vote bank politics, thereby weakening the national integration they're talking about. So united we stand, divided we fall. Of course, we have to find a common ground in such a way so that we come together, preserve this unity in diversity, fabric, letter and spirit as prescribed by the Constitution of India. That is in German. It is that way we are talking about. So regionalism, that can weaken, that the time-tested fabric of unity in diversity. And if promoted in ultra manner, but positive regionalism promotes a sense of pride in connecting one's roots and culture. This is positive regionalism. You feel proud. At the same time, that you respect other, that the sentiments of other regions also. But negativity, when we talk about regionalism, of course, that threatens national security, the internal security, the cultural pluralism fabric we are talking about. Let us in German, it is right time, let me take you to the next level. So it has been noticed, that we are talking about the regional movements have helped the art and culture of many neglected regions to flourish, revival. That by increasing their exposure, that through local emphasis, that's fantastic. The preservation of that identity, that's fantastic. They've been revived. So this we appreciate, when it comes to regionalism. So therefore, in principle, regionalism need not be regarded as an unhealthy or anti-national phenomenon, unless it takes militant, aggressive turn to, that encourage the growth of secessionist tendencies like Khalistan or Kashmir insurgency, Kashmir militancy like. Ladies and gentlemen, it is that way we are talking about. Ladies and gentlemen, right, it is the right time. So, okay, sir, what is the way forward? Yes, sir, fantastic. In what way we can overcome all this, tendency, the negativity especially. As I said, that all those grievances, people felt neglected, relatively deprived, that those grievances should be met first. So that's the point. So asymmetric, the development between states, regional imbalances needs to be, looked into. The unity in diversity ethos needs to be preserved, so that you preserve the pluralistic character of the that India, and while accommodating the multiple aspirations of the diverse population. So the unity by that unity in diversity, unity not by uniformity. If it is uniformity, it should be natural, not by force. A need of the hour is to develop each region of India through devolution of power to the local governments and empowering people, for their participation in the decision making, taking the democracy to the grassroots level. We have already done through local self-government, but is it practice, letter and spirit? We have to check. By corruption or red tapeism, procedural delay, or that maybe the corporate driven politics, that do we neglect them? It is not underdevelopment that pushing people into poverty and hunger. Even the very development in the name of encouragement also pushing people into poverty. That threatens national security. We are talking that fabric also. That's why Naxalism, that even northeastern insurgency, even the very forced religious conversion or fundamental religious fundamentalism we are talking about, even majoritarianism sometimes pushing minorities into the forced religious conversion or religious fundamentalism. It is that way, ladies and gentlemen. It is the need of the hour, that to be sensitive to all this, the tendencies of relative deprivation, and also promoting even development of hitherto neglected areas. It is right time. So that, that everybody feeling, that they are part of the national mainstream, they feel they are included, not excluded. Well, in democracy, rejection leads to isolation. Nobody felt, that relatively deprived or excluded. That should be the motto of, that the governance at the state and central we are talking about, ladies and gentlemen. So the central government must not interfere in the affairs of the state unless it is unavoidable for the national interest. It's not poking the nose every time. So the cooperative federalism, otherwise competitive federalism, that you practice in another sense. Otherwise, that it is that way, the state autonomy is preserved. Otherwise, the smoothened center-state relations should be, that preserved in such a way, ladies and gentlemen. So the problems of people must be solved in a peaceful constitutional manner. The problems of the people must be solved in a peaceful and constitutional manner we are talking about. So it's not by, the Bohors, by militancy, that so because we believe in peace, because there is no solutions through violence. It is land of Buddha, land of Mahatma Gandhi, but within the domestic level, not in the border, but where we need our uncles Subhash Chandra Bose, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. But within, that India, we need our grandpa Mahatma Gandhi. But at the border, we need Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose and Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. Strategy is different. Right person for the right post. Okay, so the problems of the people, that must be solved in a peaceful and constitutional manner, ladies and gentlemen. So the politicians must be allowed to, must not be, they are already doing, must not be, that allowed to misuse the issue of regional demands for their own political expediency or vote bank politics. The guys, protecting, that, anti-Hindi agitation protests, they take part political parties, their kids are speaking good Hindi. And some MPs are given seats saying that, that guy knows Hindi. Do you know Hindi? Within a party, the very party opposed Hindi. Anti-Hindi agitation. Oh my God, double standards, Oh. It is that way, that so, don't fall prey to all this. Iru modi therindavan arinjanukku samanam. It's better to learn, additional language, but it should not be by force, I understand. But out of necessity is mother of invention. But political parties have no, that first of all, that locus standi, to speak about this, when your own double standards, I'm talking about frauds. Okay, so except for, that issues of national importance, the state should be given freedom to run their own affairs. The state autonomy talks about, ladies and gentlemen, and not only that, the changes are necessary in the central state relations in favor of the state. Of course, already that there is a cry in Niti Aayog and Finance Commission, 15th Commission report also. So, by introducing the national education, that would help people to overcome the regional feelings and develop an attachment towards the nation. That whatever measures taken by the central government, that should not, that should be the pull factor, not push factor. That should gel the people, and that should, that so that people reinforce their faith towards, that national integration. So, that it is that way. So that leads to inclusive governance. And literary spirit, that we are talking about, so that people are very happy, so that there will be peace in the nation. We are talking about not pieces, peace. So for that, peace is a prerequisite of the prosperity or economic development. Without peace, no prosperity. Then there will be no happiness among the people. That's very important. So that demands balance, addressing all these grievances. So the governments at the state level need to find out alternative. It's not always depending on central government for its own resources. How long you are going to depend? Why don't you make your state self-sustainable by motivating the human resources to go for R&D, strengthening R&D. But for that, you have to stop indulging in corruption, stop indulging in nepotism, favoritism, cronyism. We talk all those things we are talking about parallelly. Caesar's wife should be beyond suspicion. First, are you good at governance at the state level? Later, you can blame, central administration. Are you good at, the governance in the local body level? Later, you can blame, central administration. So, we talk that way, that. So, three fingers are already looking at when you point finger at someone else. Okay. So, that, it is that way we are talking about, So, the governments at the state level need to find out alternate, you try to make your state self-sustainable by creating your own energy, source of employment for local people, and use the technology in governance. It's not waiting for always central government. The dependency, reduce your dependency. And that demands, proactive planning and agriculture development. Western and southern states are doing fantastic this way, and I expect even other states like Bimarav states, they should be more proactive in that sense, so that that the dependency may be less. Beyond that, as I said, am I Tamilian or am I Indian? Am I Cosmosan? Am I a human being? Otherwise, there are several identities. I'm a human being. That identity is more than everything we are talking about. So fantastic. So Mahatma Gandhi said, once, I'm a proud Gujarati and a proud Indian. I don't see any difference between the two. So that should be the motto of everyone. That should be the attitude of everyone. Okay, that nothing wrong in having affinity towards your own region, but it should not be at the cost of others. Nothing wrong in having community feeling. Nothing wrong in having that your own that interest in your own community or caste. But it should not be. You please ensure that it's not becoming ism, casteism, communalism, regionalism, racism. That becomes negativity. So that demands maturity. That demands balance. So that as you have your own life is important, you have to understand there are other people whose life is also equally important. The moment you start understanding, everything is fantastic. That demands a level of maturity. Ladies and gentlemen, hope may the Almighty God bless all our political leaders, great maturity, and all our citizens, and you, me, for everybody it is applicable. I'm not that saying that way. So we are all stakeholders collectively for that. If regionalism promotes art and cultural ethos without going out of hand, it will unify the nation and will be strengthened factor. So it is that way. The old as a one family, Vasudeva Kudumbakam. The India wants to be Vishwa Guru there. Before that, it has to prove itself here in India. Keep the house in order first. A divided home, a divided house, that never reaches the top position you might be aware. So united we stand, divided we fall. That's very important. Let's keep our house in order before we accuse the global issues. That's very important. Let's become that a regional player. That's what the Madeleine Albright, the former Secretary of State, under Bill Clinton administration, she spoke once. When we were aspiring, to become global leader. That time I think I.K. Gujral was Union External Affairs Minister, part of that United Front administration, I believe. So that she said, "Are you regional player? Later you can aspire for a global player." So of course Gujral doctrine came. That's fantastic. When Bill Clinton came and he acknowledged that, that's different story we are talking about. That's I.K. Gujral, former Prime Minister of India. That's totally different story. It is that way. So let's keep our house in order first. United we stand, divided we fall. Of course, you love your people, love your community, love your region, but at the same time, it should not be at the cost of somebody else's region, somebody else's community, or somebody else's community. If somebody else's caste, if that's the case, the love you have towards your people is no more love. That's wrong. For the sake of loving your own friend or your own, the caste people or community people, if you want to kill someone else, it is no more love. Got the idea? So that demands maturity. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that with that note, it is right time. Let me take you to the next level. And before going that, I think several things. We are running short of time. I think only one point. I think we can touch. So India's that unity lies in diversity, and it should be shielded and protected at all costs. When you see that Sanatana Dharma in that. So for only then that inclusive development that take place and India can grow as a whole. So we have to respect that unity in diversity. Ladies and gentlemen, unity by uniformity, if it is happening, it should be natural. There should not be ethnic cleansing. Ladies and gentlemen, that's wrong. So the boundaries of the state that divide people linguistically or administratively are united by one nation. Because people were there. That's what I used to tell. There were people Mongoloids. You were simply drawn. This is China. This is India. This is northeastern state, seven sister. This state. People were there. So the people were there. You divided India, Pakistan. Humanity. The tendency to divide. So let's find common ground so that we come together. So it's going beyond that. That smaller the states, better the administration. That's fantastic. But at the same time, why can't we come together? Let's keep the house in order. Why all the global nations come together and forming union? Why not Asian Union in the near future? Why like African Union, like European Union? And later, old as a one family, Vasudeva Kudumbakam. And we have to face other challenges from other planets also. thanks to that yesterday's NASA's that initiative that they reached that the red planet Mars. So let's appreciate the scientific community. Of course, even India's efforts parallelly should be appreciated. Our own ISRO mission under the leadership of the great Dr. Shivan, we have to appreciate them. So there are other challenges we are going to face. That how come it is the right time. Let's come together. Let us understand other challenges like climatic change, global warming, and other that what about other aliens in future. And what about eradicating, that the enemies of humanity, the poverty, the unemployment, the hunger, the malnutrition, other challenges. Let's focus on that instead of getting divided, ladies and gentlemen. So, linguistically, so the boundaries of the state divide people linguistically, administratively, are united by one nation, one constitution, and one spirit. And this is India. And that is united by its people of all colors, all religion, and all regions, ladies and gentlemen. And that is what the spirit we see in the constitution. Let us practice it, letter and spirit. It's not simply accusing each other. Our blaming game will never work. It's better to light a candle than cursing the darkness. As said by the great Mahatma Gandhi ji, be the change that you wish to see in the world. The charity begins at home. Let me begin. You can also start. We are all stakeholders. It's not finding fault at others. That instead, let's come together, find the common ground, so that regionalism has got both positivity as well as negativity. Let's take into account positivity, so that let's be conscious about, sensitive to this negativity, so that we preserve our unity and diversity of fabric. Ladies and gentlemen, you can also go through several articles relevant to this. The Hindu, Indian Express, variety of editorials. You please watch the Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha TV debates, especially big picture like programs. And also get the help of NCRTs, especially NCRT 11th and 12th, where you got the several articles touching this regionalism and other internal security related issues, like so NCRT books and commercial guides also you can go through. Ladies and gentlemen, let me appreciate your fantastic that spirit, the passions and perseverance. The hope I would have made your time worthwhile. Ladies and gentlemen, with the blessings of Almighty God, this is my humble attempt to expose you to the very concept called regionalism, which has got both positive as well as negative, the consequences. But that I got inspired from 2020 mains GS question of paper 1. That how the cultural assertiveness, that became responsible for regionalism in India. We took into account, that we discussed, that the holistic perspective, the taking advantage of that particular question. Ladies and gentlemen, hope you would have benefited more. Ladies and gentlemen, let's meet tomorrow same time 9 o'clock with another topic. To add more value when it comes to your civil service examination preparation, ladies and gentlemen. And that let me appreciate once again your fantastic that involvement and passion and ever learning syndrome in you. Ladies and gentlemen, please use my referral ID, say success, to avail maximum 10% discount. Last but not the least, now that Unacademy, the Summit 2.0 is happening, for February 20th and 21st. Please register yourself. Use my code success. That participate. Lot of distinguished guests available on the part of Unacademy. That's a free summit. You benefit more, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciating you once again for your participation. Thank you so much, everyone. Have the rest of the fantastic day. Till then, it's bye bye from Success Sampath. Of course, let's meet tomorrow same time 9 o'clock with another topic. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. Thank you, please. Thank you.